Buenos días a todos. Es un honor darles la bienvenida al Día Mundial del Olivo 2024, un día en el que celebramos juntos 3 décadas de la pirámide de la dieta mediterránea, símbolo de una cultura alimentaria que ha demostrado no solo beneficios invaluables para la salud, sino también su relevancia en la sostenibilidad y en la preservación de nuestro patrimonio natural y gastronómico. Hoy nos reunimos aquí, en esta distinguida sede del Consejo Superior de Investigaciones Científicas y en conexión con participantes online de diferentes partes del mundo, para reflexionar sobre el camino recorrido en la investigación y promoción del aceite de oliva y la dieta mediterránea y sobre los desafíos que enfrentamos para seguir expandiendo su conocimiento y aplicación en los próximos años. Para facilitar su participación y el acceso a la información, les recordamos que a través del código QR disponible en el material del evento podrán consultar el programa completo de esta jornada. No obstante, queremos informarles, debido a un cambio de última hora en el programa, debido a ajustes imprevistos en sus agendas, tanto el señor Luis Planas, ministro de Agricultura, Pesca y Alimentación, y la señora Eloísa del Pino, presidenta del Consejo Superior de Investigaciones Científicas, no podrán participar en el evento como estaba previsto. Ambos han expresado su pesar por no poder acompañarnos y han trasladado su apoyo y reconocimiento a los objetivos de esta jornada. Asimismo, informaros que contaremos con interpretación simultánea en inglés, francés y español para garantizar que todos puedan seguir las intervenciones con comodidad. Para comenzar oficialmente con este evento, es un honor presentarles a los distinguidos oradores de apertura. En primer lugar, invito a tomar la palabra a la vicepresidenta del Consejo Superior de Investigaciones Científicas, Ana Castro, quien nos brindará unas palabras en representación del CSIC.
Buenos días a todos y, en primer lugar, bienvenidos al CSIC, bienvenidos al Consejo Superior de Investigaciones Científicas, bienvenidos a la Casa de la Ciencia. Voy a empezar agradeciendo a nuestras distinguidas autoridades, querida Begoña, secretaria de Estado de Agricultura, Pesca y Alimentación, el ministro delegado de Horticultura de Irán, a Jaime Lillo, director ejecutivo del Consejo Oleica Internacional, Teodoro Miano, secretario general del Centro Internacional de Altos Estudios Agronómicos Mediterráneos. Gracias a todos vosotros, distinguidos y expertos asistentes. Como os decía, en primer lugar, disculpo la asistencia de Eloísa del Pino, nuestra presidenta, que lamenta muchísimo no poder estar hoy aquí compartiendo esta jornada. Y es un honor para mí recibirles aquí, en la sede del Consejo Superior de Investigaciones Científicas, para conmemorar el Día Mundial del Olivo y el 30 aniversario de la pirámide de la dieta mediterránea. El CSIC se enorgullece de unirse al COI y al Centro Internacional de Altos Estudios Agronómicos Mediterráneos en esta celebración, reafirmando así nuestro compromiso con la investigación, con la innovación y con la divulgación científica en favor de una alimentación saludable y sostenible. En 1993, un grupo de visionarios expertos en nutrición, salud pública, alimentación y cultura sentaron las bases de lo que hoy conocemos como la pirámide de la dieta mediterránea tradicional y saludable. Estarán todos de acuerdo conmigo que su trabajo marcó un antes y un después en la forma de entender la nutrición. Este hito nos brinda una oportunidad excepcional para reflexionar sobre el impacto de este patrimonio cultural en salud global y, sobre todo, para reconocer a los pioneros que, con su visión y su esfuerzo, colocaron la dieta mediterránea en el mapa mundial. Desde entonces, y como se va a demostrar hoy aquí, la comunidad científica internacional, incluyendo el CSIC, ha dedicado grandes esfuerzos a desentrañar los mecanismos por los cuales la dieta mediterránea, con el aceite de oliva como elemento central, protege nuestra salud. El CSIC, que este año cumple 85 años de historia, es la mayor institución pública de investigación en España y una de las principales de Europa. Nuestros más de 120 institutos y centros abarcan desde las ciencias experimentales y naturales hasta las ciencias sociales y humanidades. Y nuestra misión en nuestro ADN es clara, es traducir y llevar la investigación de excelencia a la sociedad para que tenga un impacto tangible. En el ámbito de la dieta mediterránea y el aceite de oliva, el CSIC desempeña un papel destacado. Déjenme comentar el destacado papel del Instituto de la Grasa de Sevilla, donde se han realizado avances claves en el estudio de la composición química del aceite de oliva, identificando compuestos bioactivos como los polifenoles, responsables de efectos beneficiosos en la salud humana, que han contribuido de gran manera a comprender mejor el papel crucial de este ingrediente en la dieta mediterránea. Estos hallazgos, frutos de décadas, como comentábamos antes, de mucho trabajo de colaboración, han demostrado cómo es capaz de reducir hasta en un 30% el riesgo de enfermedades cardiovasculares en enfermedades de alto riesgo. Hoy el profesor Enrique Martínez Force, director del Instituto de la Grasa del CSIC, compartirá con nosotros la visión del CSIC sobre el futuro de la dieta mediterránea, dándonos a todos un enfoque global de la calidad y de la seguridad que hay que mantener. Pero además del Instituto de la Grasa, en otros centros del CSIC, como decíamos también, en el Instituto de Ciencias de la Vid y del Vino, la Misión Biológica de Galicia o el Instituto de Agricultura Sostenible, están llevando a cabo investigaciones de vanguardia que contribuyen a la sostenibilidad y a la seguridad alimentaria. Permítanme ponerles algunos ejemplos. Se están desarrollando proyectos para mitigar el estrés hídrico en la vid, utilizando técnicas innovadoras para fortalecer la resistencia de las plantas a la sequía. También explorando los beneficios de los polifenoles del vino para la salud cognitiva, o se están desarrollando variedades, por ejemplo del guisante, más resilientes al cambio climático, asegurando una fuente sostenible de proteína vegetal. Estos son solo algunos ejemplos de investigación de vanguardia, pero el CSIC también cuenta con un sólido ecosistema de innovación, con empresas basadas en el conocimiento que trabajan para traducir el conocimiento científico en soluciones prácticas y con un impacto grande en el sector agroalimentario. Estas iniciativas lo que están reflejando es el compromiso del CSIC con la transferencia de tecnología y la creación de valor para la sociedad. Pero además, en el mundo que enfrentan desafíos globales como el cambio climático y la necesidad de sistemas de producción más sostenibles, la dieta mediterránea se erige como un modelo a seguir. A través de nuestras investigaciones en áreas como la mejora de la resistencia de cultivos al estrés hídrico y térmico y el desarrollo de estrategias de riego sostenible, están contribuyendo a garantizar la viabilidad de este patrimonio cultural para las generaciones futuras, algo de gran valor para nosotros. Pero nuestra labor va más allá de los laboratorios y yo creo aquí remarcar la colaboración internacional. Y es en colaboración con estos socios internacionales con quienes hemos desarrollado estrategias para garantizar la sostenibilidad de sistemas alimentarios mediterráneos frente al cambio climático. Un ejemplo es la investigación sobre nuevas variedades de olivo más resistentes y sistemas de cultivos que optimizan el uso del agua y los recursos. En términos de impacto social, el CSIC también ha contribuido a la difusión global de la dieta mediterránea como patrimonio cultural y científico. Nuestros estudios, en colaboración, han influido en políticas públicas como la inclusión de la dieta mediterránea en las recomendaciones alimentarias de la Unión Europea y han fomentado la educación nutricional no solamente en España, sino fuera de España. Además, la colaboración con el COI ha permitido desarrollar normas de calidad que benefician a productores y consumidores, asegurando la excelencia del aceite de oliva en mercados globales. Hoy nos toca reflexionar, como se decía al principio, sobre 30 años de la pirámide de la dieta mediterránea, reconociendo que esto es más que una herramienta nutricional. Es un símbolo de cómo la ciencia, la cultura y la sostenibilidad pueden converger para mejorar la vida de las personas. Y además creo que estando aquí en el CSIC, en la Casa de la Ciencia, es una oportunidad para reconocer que la ciencia es siempre un puente, en este caso, entre la tradición y la innovación. Solo me resta, en nombre del CSIC, agradecer profundamente a nuestros socios internacionales con quienes estamos co-desarrollando esta iniciativa, el hecho de estar hoy aquí con nosotros. Yo estoy segura de que juntos vamos a seguir trabajando para proteger este legado mediterráneo, adaptándolo a los desafíos que están todavía por venir. Y estoy convencida también de que la jornada de hoy va a ser un hito de valor en este camino que va a contribuir a seguir desarrollando un futuro sostenible y saludable. Muchas gracias a todos.
Muchas gracias, señora vicepresidenta. Es un privilegio también contar con la presencia de Teodoro Miano, secretario general del Centro Internacional de Altos Estudios Agronómicos Mediterráneos, a quien invito ahora a dirigirse a nosotros.
Good morning to everybody. I'm sorry I will speak in English. Madame Begoña Garcia Bernal, Secretary of State of the Ministry of Agriculture, His Excellency Mohamed Bouroumandi, Deputy Minister of Agriculture of Iran, Mrs. Castro, this Vice President of Spanish National Research Council, Mr. Javad Mirabad, President of the International Holy Council, and Mr. Jaime Lillo, Executive Director of the International Olive Council. Ambassadors, authorities, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. I'm very proud to be here today to participate in this opening session of this meeting. CIHEAM is the organization I represent, believes that Mediterranean diet can be a tool to promote sustainable food production and consumption in Mediterranean region. The diet's focus on seasonal, local, and traditional foods strengthens the connection between producers and consumers. By promoting the Mediterranean diet's principle of frugality and moderation, we can reduce food waste, particularly in households. Addressing food waste is crucial for reducing the environmental impact of our current food systems. Beyond its well-known health benefits, the Mediterranean diet has a lower environmental impact than other diets due to its emphasis on frugality, sobriety, and reduced consumption of animal products, which significantly impact soil, water resources, and greenhouse gas emissions. The Mediterranean region has very unique characteristics. I mentioned very shortly a few of them. The global change issue makes the Mediterranean basin a seriously affected hotspot, one of the major hotspots for climate change in the planet, with a number of issues like temperature rising and the impact on the system. The natural resources exploitation is another concern which is very important and exacerbated by the growing Mediterranean population expected by 2050 and impacting on water scarcity, soil degradation, biodiversity loss, which are major concerns. This has been also will be going to increase because of the mass tourism, which has a very strong impact on the water supplies, especially. Despite some positive developments, also the fishery sector remains extremely concerned because of the unsustainable fishing practices, which are pretty much still the case in our system. We still have problems with hunger, food insecurity, and malnutrition, and mainly this is concerning the availability, the accessibility, and the quality of food, leading to public health concern. And of course, this also reflects onto the vulnerability of food prices. In addition, we also observe rising prevalence of obesity, diabetes, and cardiovascular diseases, which indicates a shift away from the healthy Mediterranean diet. And this is driven by lifestyle changes, globalization, the abandonment of traditional food practice. And again, the issue of food security is concerning also aspect of food loss and wastes. We also observe strong inequalities in the system and increased disparities related to for example, youth unemployment, which is a major concern in the region, women and girls marginalization due to structural barriers and limited access to resources and opportunities, and mainly the gap between rural and urban areas. In addition, issues like migration will present challenges on our food system, as we may imagine. Since 2010, CIAM and FAO have collaborated on a program focusing on the sustainability of the food production and consumption in Mediterranean, using the Mediterranean diet as a case study. This program is based on 4 pillars of sustainability, which is reduced environmental impact, biodiversity, health and nutrition benefits, socio-cultural values, and positive economic returns from the community. CIHEAM has actively contributed to the discourse on the Mediterranean diet through the publication of numerous reports and articles, often in collaboration with several international partners. Furthermore, CIHEAM has played a key role in organizing and co-organizing 3 world conferences dedicated to Mediterranean diet. The first one in Milan in July 2016 on healthy dietary pattern. The second on sustainable food system in Palermo in 2019. And the third one in Bari towards sustainable and resilient food system in Mediterranean. So CIHEAM actively promotes sustainable Mediterranean food systems, and particularly the Mediterranean diet. One example is our SFS, Sustainable Food System MED platform, developed together institutions like UPM, FAO, and now the Prima Foundation. This partnership leverages the combined strength to foster collaboration, engage diverse stakeholders, drive transformation change towards sustainable food systems in the Mediterranean region, and possibly attract greater support from donors and international financial institutions. The Mediterranean diet, as an healthy and sustainable model, plays a pivotal role in achieving these goals and advancing the 2030 agenda in the region. In this context, olive oil, especially extra virgin olive oil, is a cornerstone of the Mediterranean diet. Its unique composition and high temperature resistance make it ideal for both cooking and flavor enhancement. Olive oil health benefits include cardiovascular disease prevention and potential cancer risk reduction. Its widespread use in traditional Mediterranean cuisine amplifies the nutritional value of meats. While intensification can negatively impact the environment, sustainable farming practices and support from traditional methods can mitigate these effects. Olive orchards provide benefits like preventing desertification and acting as carbon sinks, but it's crucial to identify and minimize the environmental impacts of certain production phases. CIHEAM recent research and cooperation efforts have expanded beyond agricultural production to focus on the sustainability of the entire food systems, encompassing the processing, the distribution, the marketing, and the consumption of food. This approach enables a deeper understanding of the challenges in ensuring food and nutritional security. Sustainable food systems are essential for achieving the UN Sustainable Development Goals and are a prerequisite for food and nutrition security, as well as social, economic, and environmental sustainability in the Mediterranean region. The current unsustainable food system in the Mediterranean are contributing to the erosion of the regional cultural food heritage, which is the foundation of the Mediterranean diet's inscription on UNESCO Intangible Cultural Heritage List. In conclusion, the Mediterranean diet stands as a beacon of sustainability, offering a pathway to address the pressing challenges of our food systems. By embracing its principle of frugality, seasonality, and locally sourced ingredients, we can foster a healthier and more sustainable future for the Mediterranean region and beyond. CIHEAM remains committed to promoting Mediterranean diet and its values, working towards a food system that nourishes both people and the planet. And before I finish, I really like to mention that we feel the IOC community, this international community, as our community, as part, it's practically a family, and we plastically show that if you look at the very small symbol of CIHEAM at the end of the picture, in the heart of the symbol, we have an olive oil tree. Thank you very much.
Muchas gracias, señor secretario general. Seguidamente agradecemos la presencia del señor Jaime Lillo, director ejecutivo del Consejo Leícola Internacional, quien compartirá unas palabras en representación del COI.
Good morning, everybody. Spanish Secretary of State of Agriculture and Food, María Begoña García Bernal, thank you for being with us today. Vice President of the International Relations of the CSIC, Anna, thank you for welcoming in the House of Science. Secretary General of CIAM, thank you very much, Mr. Miano, for your words. And ambassadors, members of the diplomatic corps, members of the advisory committee, delegations of the IOC, speakers, people from the research institutions and colleagues. Good morning to everybody and welcome to the celebration of the World Olive Tree Day that was recognized by UNESCO in 2019 to recognize this olive tree branch as a symbol of peace, wisdom, and harmony since ancient times. This is a day also to promote the cultivation of the olive trees as a cultural and natural heritage. And it's also a day to reinforce the importance of the social, cultural, economic, and environmental significance of the olive tree to the humanity. Those words that I read, they are taken from the declaration of UNESCO, and I read it because I think they are very much in line with the values of the International Olive Council, the only intergovernmental organization which is promoting the sustainability cultivation of the olive trees since 65 years ago, when it was created under the auspices of United Nations. Yesterday, we celebrate our 120th session of members, and we welcome the membership of Bosnia and Herzegovina. I want to thank you, the ambassador, her presence today, and also coming back of Lebanon and one of our members of our family, and this makes together 21 members, including the European Union, with 27 countries. So it means 47 countries being part of what we call this olive oil family, and we are all here celebrating and dedicating this day to the 30th anniversary of the publication of the Mediterranean Diet Pyramid. And we have the honor to do it with the authors, with the people and institutions which were directly involved in this historical momentum for the nutrition and health, when they create and they publicate this symbol that has been recognized and make the final contribution or recognition worldwide of the benefits for human health of the Mediterranean diet, but also the recognition of how natural and traditional food can be essential in the public health strategies. So I want to express my sincere gratitude to the speakers of today. They are maybe among the brilliant minds in our times. They are very big people in the world of science, and there are those metrics to reference and publication, and they are very, very high, and they are devoting their time to very generously to speak about the Mediterranean diet today with us. We also, it was said by Teodoro before, the olive oil, the olive tree is not only providing and I'm gonna take some words from Walter Willett from a conference that we organized the Greg organized in the Vatican, and he told me, no, they are the healthiest calories. The healthiest calories that can be naturally provided, no, and it's not only providing the healthiest calories to feed the population. The olive tree is also protecting the soils from erosion. The olive trees are a natural barrier to desertification in many areas of the Mediterranean and other parts of the world. They are a shelter for biodiversity, and they are cleaning the air. we have more than 11 million hectares of olive trees that are acting as a domesticated forest, contributing to the fight against climate change. The olive tree is part of the strategy of how to feed a growing population in a healthy and sustainable manner. And this will be developed today in the conference. And I just would like to conclude. Thank you, all of you, for sharing this celebration with us. And we hope that this event serves to inspire greater awareness and recognition to the benefits of the Mediterranean diet. Thank you all for your attention.
Muchas gracias, señor director ejecutivo. A continuación, es un honor recibir al señor Mohammad Burumandi, viceministro de Agricultura de Irán, quien también dirigirá unas palabras a los asistentes en su idioma en persa. No obstante, tendréis interpretación en inglés, francés y español. Muchas gracias.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحیم. خانم ها و آقایان، سلام، صبح شما بخیر. از اینکه در بین شما در این روز عزیز هستم بسیار خوشحالم و سلام گرم و صمیمی جناب آقای دکتر نوری، وزیر محترم جهاد کشاورزی جمهوری اسلامی ایران را به شما حضار گرامی تقدیم می نمایم. روز زیتون، این درخت مقدس که نماد صلح در جهان است را به همه شما دوستداران این میوه بهشتی تبریک میگویم. از همکاران شورای بین المللی زیتون، مدیر محترم اجرایی این شورا آقای خیملیو و همچنین شورای ملی تحقیقات اسپانیا و مرکز بین المللی مدیترانه پیشرفته مطالعات زراعی سیام بابت این برنامه بسیار فاخر تشکر می نمایم. به درستی می دانید که امنیت غذایی یکی از مهمترین مواردی است که بشر در همه زمانها با آن چالش داشته است. چه بسا تلاش بسیاری توسط ملل مختلف برای افزایش ضریب امنیت غذایی در حال انجام است. تغییرات آب و هوایی یکی از پدیده‌های جوی است که اخیراً امنیت غذایی را در همه جوامع تحت شعاع قرار داده است. بهره‌وری بیشتر از آب و خاک در این شرایط تغییرات آب و هوایی به منظور تأمین نیازهای غذایی خانواده‌ها، به ویژه قشرهای کم درآمد، مجموعه‌ای از استراتژی دولت‌ها باید باشد. علاوه بر این، اثرات مستقیم نقش مواد غذایی در سلامت جامعه نیز یکی دیگر از اهداف مهم و استراتژیک امروز جوامع برای تأمین سلامت است که اگر بهبود کمی و کیفی تولید در کشورهایی که تغییرات آب و هوایی در آنها معنیدار بوده انجام نگیرد، ناامنی و افزایش هزینه‌های درمان از پدیده‌های اجتماعی است که دولت‌ها را نیز تهدید می‌کند. زیتون یکی از قدیمی‌ترین گیاهان شناخته شده است که به عنوان یکی از منابع مهم غذایی به شمار رفته و با تأمین روغن و چربی مورد نیاز بدن در تأمین سلامتی و انرژی مورد نیاز انسان نقش بسزایی دارد. گروهی از دانشمندان خاستگاه زیتون را حوزه مدیترانه و کشورهای اطراف آن می‌دانند که به دیگر مناطق جهان انتقال یافته است. سازمان خاروبار جهانی FAO در سال 2005 اعلام کرد دانش و تجربه تکثیر غیرجنسی زیتون از ایران به سایر مناطق انتقال یافته است که بیانگر اهمیت چنین رویدادهای مهمی است که اینک این جمع مهم را برای زیتون گرد هم آورده است. زیتون، این درخت ارزشمند، از دیرباز نماد صلح و دوستی در جهان بوده و نشانه اتحاد، تفاهم و همکاری برای تمدن‌های مدیترانه‌ای و اقصا نقاط جهان می باشد. ماحصل فرایند فراوری میوه روغن زیتون است که بخشی از نیازهای غذایی مردم را تأمین می کند و در درمان انواع بیماری‌ها و بالا بردن سلامت جامعه نیز مؤثر است. از این رو توسعه باغ‌های زیتون با در نظر گرفتن کیفیت محصول نهایی به درجه اهمیت آن در تأمین سلامت و امنیت غذایی می‌افزاید. جمهوری اسلامی ایران با برنامه‌ریزی مناسب به دنبال توسعه زیتون بوده و توسعه کمی همراه با توسعه کیفی و بالا بردن کیفیت روغن را سرلوحه برنامه خود قرار داده است. این رویکرد با هدف افزایش ضریب مصرف روغن به دنبال ارتقاء سلامت جامعه است و تلاش می شود روغن زیتون در سبد جیره غذایی قرار گیرد تا با ارتقاء سلامت مردم موجب پیشگیری از بیماری‌ها و کاهش هزینه‌های درمان شود. در پایان ضمن تشکر از همه عزیزانی که برای برگزاری این برنامه همکاری بسیار داشته‌اند سپاسگزارم. از حضور بسیار ارزشمند سرکار خانم ماریا بگونا، قائم مقام محترم کشاورزی کشور دوست اسپانیا تشکر می کنم و از محضر شریف ایشان دعوت می کنم تا از ظرفیت‌های کشاورزی و غذایی در ایران دیدن نمایند، زیرا ایران کشور مهمی است. در حوزه‌های کشاورزی و غذایی بسیار مهم است و شرایط منحصر به فردی را دارد، به طوری که 11 اقلیم از 13 اقلیم جهان را در خود جای داده و در تولید انواع محصولات کشاورزی سرآمد منطقه است. منتظر حضور ارزشمند شما در جمهوری اسلامی ایران هستم. از حضور بسیار ارزشمند جناب آقای خیملیو، از حضور ارزشمند سفرای محترم و همینطور سفیر محترم جمهوری اسلامی ایران جناب آقای دکتر زبیب که نقش بسیار مهمی در تعامل کشورم با شورای بین‌المللی زیتون را دارند و ایفا می‌نمایند تشکر می‌کنم. برای همه عزیزان آرزوی توفیق دارم.
Muchas gracias, señor viceministro. Finalmente, es un honor para nosotros tener aquí presente a la señora María Begoña García Bernal, secretaria de Estado de Agricultura y Alimentación, quien cerrará las intervenciones de apertura.
Buenos días a todos y a todas las autoridades aquí presentes y en primer lugar quiero disculpar al ministro Planas por no poder estar hoy aquí acompañando como siempre lo hace, pero un problema de agenda de última hora le ha impedido compartir este acto, que por otro lado, pues para mí es un orgullo y un placer estar con vosotros y con vosotras, no solo por estar en la Casa de la Ciencia, Ana, en el CSIC, sino por el tema que tratamos, por el olivo, por el olivar. Os lo cuenta una extremeña que tiene en su tierra mucho olivar y además mucho olivar tradicional, mucho olivar en pendiente y mucho olivar en montaña, que no solo trabaja y es importante para la sostenibilidad ambiental, sino para la social y sobre todo también que el olivar tradicional en mi tierra Es un cultivo cortafuego y es el cultivo que rodea a los pueblos y que salva a los pueblos de los grandes incendios de los montes. Quería empezar por ahí, además decir que coincidir el Día Mundial del Olivo con la conmemoración del 30 aniversario de la pirámide de la dieta mediterránea, desde luego es muy importante y da imagen de la vigencia de la cuestión, por el alto nivel científico de los ponentes que hoy están aquí y por hacerlo, desde luego, coincidir con este Día Mundial. Un día que nos recuerda la necesidad de proteger este cultivo y también de promover sus valores, los valores de la paz, la sabiduría y la armonía que simboliza. La paz y la seguridad alimentaria forman parte de un mismo campo de acción y más si por desgracia en estos momentos. Los conflictos bélicos generan efectos perniciosos sobre los flujos alimentarios y amenazan con la escasez a las poblaciones más vulnerables, sobre todo a las mujeres y a las niñas. Por ello, la seguridad alimentaria es uno de nuestros retos más apremiantes. Además, el valor del olivo como símbolo de la paz se le une el de la sostenibilidad, su importancia cultural y paisajística y, desde luego, su gran valor nutritivo. Nuestro aceite de oliva no deja de acumular estudios e investigaciones que le atribuyen cada vez más propiedades beneficiosas para la salud, algo extensible a la dieta mediterránea, donde la presencia del aceite de oliva es un elemento diferenciador. Esa dieta mediterránea continúa siendo considerada el patrón de la alimentación y el estilo de vida más saludable por numerosos científicos y organismos internacionales como la Organización Mundial de la Salud o la propia FAO. Numerosos estudios científicos avalan que nuestra dieta actúa en la prevención de las enfermedades. Por ello, es tan importante que cada vez se adhiera más a ella los jóvenes y los niños. La salud y el placer gastronómico se conjugan perfectamente en esta dieta mediterránea. Y el aceite de oliva es un elemento relevante de la misma, cuenta con importantes cualidades saludables científicamente reconocidas sobre las que van a ilustrarnos los conferenciantes esta mañana. Desde el Ministerio de Agricultura, Pesca y Alimentación nos esforzamos por difundir la alta calidad de nuestro aceite de oliva y también por sus propiedades nutricionales y saludables. Este es nuestro objetivo, tanto en nuestra estrategia Alimentos de España como con Spain Food Nation o con los organismos de las interprofesionales en sus acciones en el exterior. En España se han realizado estudios recientes que demuestran de forma fehaciente la prevención de enfermedades cardiovasculares de la dieta mediterránea en combinación con el consumo del aceite de oliva virgen, hasta el punto de que el aceite de oliva es uno de los pocos alimentos que posee varias menciones de salud autorizadas en el marco de la Unión Europea. Recientemente, una asociación de productores fundada en España ha solicitado a la EFSA la autorización de una declaración de propiedades saludables para el aceite de oliva virgen. De esta manera, España se convierte en pionera en la solicitud de una alegación para el aceite de oliva, pues de aprobarse, esta sería la primera declaración de reducción de enfermedad autorizada para el aceite de oliva. pero la dieta mediterránea y el aceite de oliva son también sus gentes y sus mujeres. En estos momentos estamos en la campaña en Andalucía, por ejemplo, en Jaén, donde el padre de mis amigos está trabajando y está recogiendo con la gente el fruto del trabajo y del esfuerzo de toda una campaña. No solo hablamos de productos más magníficos y de sus formas de elaboración y de cómo nutrir de forma saludable. También nuestros agricultores y agricultoras y olivicultores y olivicultoras tienen mucho que decir en esa calidad y en ese buen hacer. Y déjenme que mencione el papel de las mujeres en este proceso. Reconocer su importante función es una cuestión de justicia, pero también de inteligencia, puesto que siempre han sido clave y es ahora también un elemento imprescindible como motor de transformación de la producción oleícola y de la actividad agraria en su conjunto. Concretamente, en el caso del olivar, las mujeres han tomado las riendas en áreas como la investigación, la comercialización, la distribución, la industria y muy especialmente el emprendimiento, donde las mujeres están situadas y están posicionando iniciativas muy creativas, muy innovadoras y singulares. Ellas están liderando proyectos que no solo elevan la calidad del aceite de oliva y sus posibilidades de producción y sus aplicaciones, sino que abren nuevas oportunidades, tanto en los mercados locales como en los internacionales. Este creciente protagonismo femenino también ha llegado a las cooperativas, a los paneles de cata, a los departamentos de mercadotecnia y calidad, donde la mujer ofrece una perspectiva renovada. Su liderazgo se traduce en nuevos enfoques de consumo y etiquetados que resaltan los beneficios del aceite de oliva virgen extra y estimulan su apreciación en el mercado global. Por todo ello, creo oportuno señalar en este Día Mundial del Olivo el valor añadido que han aportado y siguen aportando las mujeres al sector agroalimentario en este país, vertebrando además las sociedades rurales. Las mujeres somos las que fijamos la población al territorio. Y finalizando, decirles que hemos de introducir el consumo del aceite de oliva y la dieta mediterránea en el debate sobre sistemas alimentarios sostenibles y saludables que se ha iniciado en la FAO, que comenzará en breve en la Unión Europea con esta nueva legislatura, por fin desde el 1 de diciembre, y además con una mujer española, con Teresa Rivera al frente como número 2 de la Comisión Europea. En España estamos abordando todo esto a través de la Estrategia Nacional de Alimentación. Precisamente la semana que viene, el lunes 25, finaliza el proceso participativo de esta estrategia, donde hablaremos de la importancia de la dieta mediterránea, de la que el aceite de oliva es una parte fundamental y con la que queremos influir también en foros supranacionales. Ya sin más, les dejo que disfruten de esta fantástica jornada que será de gran provecho para todos y todas. Muchas gracias.
Muchas gracias, señora secretaria de Estado. Antes de continuar, necesitaremos unos minutos para que la señora María Begoña García puede abandonar la sala por compromisos de agenda y ahora continuamos con las presentaciones. A continuación, daremos inicio a una serie de presentaciones sobre la evolución y los beneficios de la pirámide de la dieta mediterránea. Nos acompaña el señor Raúl Compés, director del CIAM Zaragoza, quien guiará a los distinguidos ponentes a lo largo de sus exposiciones. Señor Compés.
Good morning. It's a pleasure for me to be here with you as a presenter of the second part, if you want, the technical scientific part of this session. For me, as director of the CIAN Zaragoza, it is the headquarters of the CIAN in Spain, it's a real pleasure, in fact, because we have a special relation with the CSIC. We have an agreement of cooperation with the CSIC, and we collaborate a lot with the International Olive Council. We organize together with the University of Cordoba, the Andalusian government, and other entities a master in olive oil production. And we organize with the IOC2 every year at least one or two specialized advanced courses. So I am the pleasure to be the moderator of one session where it's going to participate some of the most prominent scientific in the world about the Mediterranean diet. Let me introduce a little bit this session, telling that although this diet has a millennial-old tradition, it was not properly recognized until a group of leading nutrition scientists, public health experts, food and cultural scholars began to investigate the patterns of traditional Mediterranean diet circa 1960s. This effort, building on the earlier pioneering work of Professor Ansel Keys and his 7 countries study, and led by the world-renowned institutions such as the Harvard T.H. Chan School of Public Health, Department of Nutrition, and the World Health Organization, in collaboration with Always Preservation and Exchange Trust, culminated in a series of conferences and papers that established the healthy traditional Mediterranean diet pyramid, recognized worldwide. Well, to start with these conferences, I am going to introduce you to Professor Enrique Martínez Porce. Enrique, I'm going to introduce you in Spanish, so one moment if you want. Es profesor de investigación del Consejo Superior de Investigaciones Científicas, es el actual director del Instituto de la Grasa, doctor en Ciencias Biológicas por la Universidad de Sevilla. El doctor Martínez Porce ha centrado su actividad en el campo del metabolismo de los lípidos vegetales y más concretamente en la caracterización genética, bioquímica y molecular de las rutas biosintéticas de ácidos grasos y lípidos. Su reconocimiento internacional en el campo de los lípidos vegetales, así como la estrecha relación con los principales laboratorios de investigación en este campo, le ha llevado a desarrollar numerosos proyectos internacionales con un elevado nivel de transferencia y a la participación en numerosos comités científicos. Le hemos pedido a Enrique que nos explique en 15 minutos, como máximo, la historia del CSIC en relación con el aceite de oliva. Muchas gracias. Puedes tomar la palabra.
Muchas gracias, Raúl, por tu introducción. Autoridades, distinguido público, como ha dicho antes nuestra vicepresidenta, bueno, mi vicepresidenta de transferencia, el Consejo Superior de Investigación, el Consejo Superior de Investigaciones Científicas va un poquito lento. El Consejo Superior de Investigaciones Científicas del CSIC es la mayor institución pública de España dedicada a la investigación científica y técnica, una de las más destacadas del espacio europeo de investigación y la séptima a nivel mundial. Está adscrito al Ministerio de Ciencia e Innovación y Universidades y está formado por 121 institutos y 3 centros nacionales. Estos institutos se integran en 3 áreas globales que cubren todas las áreas del conocimiento que denominamos sociedad, vida y materia. Hoy celebramos tanto el Día Mundial del Olivo como conmemoramos el 30 aniversario de la pirámide de la dieta mediterránea. Y el CSIC tiene mucho que decir en ambos casos, pero en particular en el caso del aceite de oliva, no solo porque parte de sus institutos de investigación se encuentran en las mayores regiones olivareras de España, sino porque además es la institución de investigación con un mayor número de publicaciones a nivel mundial sobre el tema de investigación. El Consejo Superior de Investigaciones Científicas del CSIC ha cubierto en sus temas de investigación en el campo de... Esto va... Perdón, estoy viendo cosas distintas. Va. El Consejo Superior de Investigaciones Científicas ha cubierto en los campos de investigación relacionados con el aceite de oliva, otra vez, los temas de el cultivo, el procesamiento y sostenibilidad relacionado con la obtención del aceite de oliva, su caracterización y calidad y autenticidad, sus efectos sobre nuestra nutrición y salud, estudios sociales de divulgación y formación. Entre todos sus institutos caben destacar algunos de los que pongo en la presentación, como el Instituto de la Grasa de Sevilla, el Instituto de Agricultura Sostenible de Córdoba, la Estación Experimental de Ceidín de Granada, el Instituto de Recursos Naturales y Agrobiología de Sevilla, el Centro de Edafología y Biología Aplicada del Segura en Murcia, el Instituto de Ciencia y Tecnología de los Alimentos y Nutrición de Madrid, el Instituto de Hortofruticultura Subtropical y Mediterránea La Mayora de Málaga o el Instituto de Ciencias Agrarias de Madrid, por mencionar algunos. Estos institutos se integran además en 3 áreas científicas concretas, como son ciencias agrarias, ciencia y tecnología de los alimentos y recursos naturales. Históricamente podemos considerar como punto de inicio de la relación del Consejo Superior de Investigaciones Científicas con el aceite de oliva en la decisión que tomó el patronato Juan de la Cierva del CSIC en 1946 de crear un instituto dedicado a resolver los problemas relacionados con las aceitunas, el aceite de oliva y las industrias de sus derivados, el Instituto de la Grasa de Sevilla. Instituto que desde su primer año inició investigaciones ya relacionadas con los procesos de obtención de aceite de oliva y su caracterización. En 1952 se termina la construcción del edificio que lo alojaría hasta el 2014, año en el que se trasladó a sus nuevas instalaciones del campus de la Universidad Pablo de Olavide de Sevilla. A día de hoy, el 72% de las publicaciones del CSIC sobre el tema del aceite de oliva provienen de este instituto, siendo además el centro de investigación con un mayor número de publicaciones a nivel mundial sobre el tema. Con respecto al cultivo del olivo, los institutos del CSIC han realizado estudios basados en la agronomía, fisiología del olivo, fitopatología, entomología, factores del cultivo que afectan a la calidad del aceite, mejora genética, biotecnología vegetal y estudios de la conservación de la biodiversidad del olivar, entre otros. Por mencionar algunos ejemplos de estos estudios, señalaría los estudios de la fisiología del olivo ante el estrés hídrico que se han desarrollado en el Instituto de Recursos Naturales y Agrobiología de Sevilla, la elaboración de un atlas transcriptómico de los genes en el olivo por parte de la Estación Experimental del Ceidín, la puesta a punto de la regeneración de olivo por vía somática en el IHSM, la obtención de variedades de olivo adecuadas para cultivos superintensivos como la chiquita, o el estudio genómico de genes relacionados con la síntesis de aceite en distintas variedades de olivo llevados a cabo en el Instituto de Agricultura Sostenible de Córdoba. Asimismo, también señalar los estudios sobre enfermedades del olivo, con la Xylella verticillium o la mosca de olivo en laboratorios de contención de nivel 2 mejorada en el Instituto de Agricultura Sostenible, el control inteligente de plagas mediante drones del Instituto de Ciencias de la Alimentación de Madrid o la caracterización por parte de la Misión Biológica de Galicia de variedades autóctonas, incluyendo el registro y licencia de 2 variedades, la brava y la mansa gallega. Tenemos que volver a Sevilla, al Instituto de la Grasa, para hablar del procesamiento del aceite de oliva. En 1959, el Instituto de la Grasa inaugura en su segunda sede en Bellavista sus plantas pilotos, que incluyen una moderna almazara experimental, cuyo diseño ha sido copiado durante años, siendo referencia a nivel mundial. El instituto sigue manteniendo sus instalaciones, una almazara experimental dedicada a la investigación y docencia. Entre las aportaciones de la almazara, además de las modificaciones de las maquinarias de la misma, podemos destacar el uso del microtalco natural como coadyuvante durante el proceso de extracción. Las instalaciones del instituto además se completan con una planta de extracción y refinación de aceite para completar todas las investigaciones relacionadas con el aceite de oliva. Con respecto al procesamiento y sostenibilidad, las investigaciones que el CSIC han ido dirigidas al diseño de almazaras, la optimización de los procesos de extracción, el desarrollo de procesos de refinación más suaves con menor uso de productos químicos o la valoración de sus productos desarrollando nuevas aplicaciones. Por citar algunos ejemplos y siguiendo en la actualidad los objetivos que se persiguen, que son la modificación de las condiciones de procesado para aumentar la calidad sensorial de los aceites extraídos, alcanzar el 0 residuos en las almazaras industriales o la invención en sistemas de extracción, los proyectos que se están llevando a cabo podría entre ellos señalar el proyecto Phenoils, que persigue obtener aceite de oliva virgen extra con un mayor contenido en polifenoles, o los que persiguen la economía circular del proceso, utilizando alperujo para la obtención de biochar y su uso como enmienda para los suelos, el uso de biomasa residual del olivar para la obtención de hidrochar para la absorción de herbicidas presentes en el agua, la fermentación anaerobia del alperujo para la producción de biogás o la obtención mediante nades de extractos fenólicos por un lado y de alpeonades para la obtención de vermicompost por el otro. La caracterización y evaluación de la calidad del aceite de oliva es un proceso fundamental para garantizar su autenticidad, pureza y propiedades organolépticas. Para llevar a la práctica los métodos analíticos puestos a punto por sus investigadores, en 1954 se estableció la Unidad de Análisis Externo del Instituto de la Grasa, en la actualidad certificada con la 17025, determinando durante todos estos años la pureza de aceites y detectando la presencia además de posibles contaminantes en ellos. En esta imagen muestro algunos de los métodos analíticos reconocidos internacionalmente para el análisis de aceite de oliva desarrollados gracias a investigadores de este instituto junto con las instituciones de Francia e Italia. Los conocimientos sobre los aceites y técnicas analíticas desarrolladas para su caracterización hacen que los investigadores del CSIC formen parte de un gran número de paneles de expertos en organismos reguladores internacionales. El estudio exhaustivo de los aceites llevó al Instituto de la Grasa en la década de 1980-1990 a construir la mayor base de datos químicos existente en el mundo sobre el aceite de oliva. Datos muy relevantes a la hora de la determinación de la autenticidad de los aceites y la detección de posibles fraudes. Como comentaba, el desarrollo de estas técnicas, además de para una completa caracterización, ha permitido la detección y cuantificación de contaminantes en el aceite, como los ya reconocidos MCPD y los ésteres de glicerol, o los que más nos preocupan en este momento, los hidrocarburos de aceite mineral, los MOSH y los MOA. Estos últimos, de difícil determinación y cuantificación, están siendo analizados con las últimas tecnologías como serían cromatografía líquida, gases acoplada a gases con detección FID o la más discriminante, cromatografía de gases bidimensional asociada a masas. Esta capacidad de análisis y conocimientos permiten a los laboratorios del CSIC colaborar en la detección del fraude con los cuerpos y fuerzas de seguridad del Estado, discriminando mezclas ilegales de aceite, de mal etiquetado y otros tipos diferentes de fraude. Destacar en este punto la participación de los expertos de toda Europa, incluidos del CSIC, en el proyecto europeo Oleum para la puesta a punto de métodos específicos para la detección de algunos tipos de fraude, como las mezclas con aceite de oliva suavemente desodorizado o con otros aceites vegetales de difícil identificación. Al hablar de la calidad, no podemos olvidar que la categoría de un aceite de oliva viene determinada por sus propiedades organolépticas, evaluadas mediante un panel de cata. De nuevo, el Instituto de la Grasa inició el camino para el desarrollo de un panel sensorial en 1960 y desde 1982 participó de la mano del COI en el desarrollo de una normativa para evaluar los caracteres organolépticos de los aceites de oliva virgen. En la actualidad, el Instituto de la Grasa cuenta con un moderno panel de cata con panelistas expertos y las más altas certificaciones del sector. El aroma del aceite de oliva no es algo simple, sino que viene dado por un gran número de compuestos volátiles, como muestro en los cromatogramas de la imagen, cuya mezcla evocarán en el catador olores conocidos que reconocerán en el panel. El gran número de muestras a analizar y el limitado número de paneles existentes ha llevado a las empresas oleícolas a reclamar métodos analíticos que sustituyan a este panel. De nuevo, el Instituto de la Grasa no solo ha venido desarrollando durante años la conocida nariz electrónica, sino que también ha llevado a cabo estudios de aquellas áreas del cerebro que se activan en función del olor del aceite o el defecto experimentado por el catador. Esto finalmente ha llevado al desarrollo y búsqueda de un conjunto de sensores de distinta naturaleza que permitan la discriminación de las clases de aceite de manera similar a la del panel de cata, aunque al ser similar a un catador sigue habiendo problemas con la discriminación entre los borderline que se encuentran en la muestra. Al hablar del aceite de oliva no hay que olvidar los aspectos relacionados con la nutrición y la salud. El aceite de oliva tiene una composición particular de ácidos grasos, rico en el ácido graso monoinsaturado, ácido oleico. Además, los aceites de oliva virgen y virgen extra contienen un contenido similar a un 2% en peso de componentes minoritarios que incluyen fitosteroles, tocoferoles y polifenoles. Durante algún tiempo se consideró que el alto contenido de ácidos grasos monoinsaturados era el responsable de los efectos protectores del aceite de oliva. En 1995, aprovechando la disponibilidad de aceites vegetales alto oleico de semillas oleaginosas, investigadores del instituto llevaron a cabo un estudio de intervención con monjas de clausura, poniendo de manifiesto que no era el contenido enoleico, sino los componentes minoritarios del aceite de oliva los que produjeron efectos beneficiosos en la hipertensión y obesidad de estas monjas. Tras este estudio, estos mismos investigadores participaron en otros estudios de intervención como el Predimed con la dieta mediterránea. A estos siguieron estudios con componentes de la fracción minoritaria como el de estudio Prediabole, utilizando aceite enriquecido en ácido oleanoico para el tratamiento, para la prevención de la diabetes de tipo 2 en individuos de alto riesgo. El éxito obtenido con Prediabole llevó a formular otros dos nuevos estudios, Oltrad y BioOltrad, en los que se está utilizando el aceite de oliva suplementado con oleanoico ya como tratamiento de la diabetes y además se está procediendo a su estudio de biodisponibilidad. En la actualidad se encuentran en marcha otros dos estudios, Cordial y Neurolea, para estudiar el efecto del orujo de oliva y el aceite de oliva enriquecido en oleanoico en relación con el tratamiento del Alzheimer. Mencionar también estudios con otros componentes minoritarios del aceite, como son el oleacantal y la oleacina en el estudio April o el hidroxiterosol en el proyecto Oleacore. Para finalizar en tiempo, mencionar como muestra algunos estudios relacionados en el área global de sociedad, también incluida dentro de los institutos del CSIC, como por ejemplo el informe sobre la investigación e innovación en el sector del aceite de oliva en España, problemas, oportunidades y prioridades del I+D+I, que se publicó en 2011 para la plataforma tecnológica del olivar, Alenta, o los ensayos sobre el olivo en el arte español o el comercio del aceite andalusí. Además, desde 1950 el CSIC publica la revista Grasa y Aceite, dirigida desde el Instituto de la Grasa para divulgar los trabajos de investigación relacionados con el tema de los aceites de oliva. Los estudios del CSIC se complementan con su oferta educativa, cursos que se iniciaron en 1961 con el curso superior de especialización en grasas, que alcanzó 31 ediciones y culminan con la participación de su personal en másteres especializados de la Universidad de Córdoba, Jaén o de la Pablo de Olavide de Sevilla. Resumiendo, el CSIC ha contribuido a aumentar la producción y la calidad del aceite de oliva español, a reforzar la competitividad del sector oleícola español a nivel internacional, promover el consumo de aceite de oliva como alimento saludable y a preservar el patrimonio oleícola español. Muchas gracias por su atención.
Thank you very much, Enrique. Let's continue our session, technical session. We are going to start that we call the segment, the popularization of the Mediterranean dietary pyramid. And our next speaker is Greg Drescher. I'm going to introduce you, Mr. Drescher. He's a senior advisor for strategic initiatives at the Culinary Institute of America, CIA. Previously and more recently as vice president of this Institute for Strategic Initiatives and Industry Leadership, he designed and oversaw the college's leadership initiatives, including academic partnerships, conferences, and other global initiatives. Over the course of nearly 30 years, with the CIA, he has led the creation of the Worlds of Flavor International Conference and Festival, as well as portfolio of health and sustainable leadership programs, including Menus of Change and Healthy Kitchens, Healthy Lives, both jointly presented by the Harvard School of Public Health, and the Menus of Change University Research Collaborative, co-led by the CIA and Stanford University as the CNA's Plan Forward Kitchen Digital Media Initiatives. In 2005, Greg was inducted into the James Beard Foundation's Who is Who of Food and Beverage in America, and subsequently shared 2 Beard Awards for the CIA's World Culinary Arts Digital Media Series. In the early 90s, before joining the CIA, he jointly spearheaded a multi-year collaboration of some of the world's leading food and health experts and organizations, including the Harvard T.H. Chan School of Public Health and the World Health Organization, in researching and authoring the Mediterranean Diet Pyramid, a cultural model for healthy eating, released in its final form in 1994. Finally, the cumulative results of this initiative research were published in a special edition of the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition, creating a strong platform for much of the academic, public policy, media, and consumer interest in the Mediterranean diet that has followed over the past 3 decades. Thank you very much, Mr. Drescher, for being with us. Please take the floor. And he's going to talk about the Mediterranean diet pyramid yesterday and today. Thank you. You have 15 minutes. Well, if you can do it. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. It's always a pleasure to be back here in Madrid, and I very much appreciate the organization of today's event, honoring, as we said 30 years ago, what led to the creation and release of the Mediterranean Diet Pyramid in 1994. Special thanks to the International Olive Council, as well as the Spanish National Research Council, the Ministry of Agriculture, Fisheries, and Food, and the International Center for Advanced Mediterranean Agronomic Studies, other collaborators, and distinguished guests. Earlier this year in the United States, a distinguished panel of nutrition scientists and public health experts under the auspices of the U.S. News and World Report once again proclaimed the Mediterranean diet as the #1 ranked dietary pattern they reviewed for the 7th year in a row. The accumulation of many years of scientific research confirming the health benefits of the traditional Mediterranean diet has led to widespread awareness of this culturally rooted plant-forward dietary pattern, with increasing adoption by so many around the world. This moderate to high-fat dietary pattern has been characteristic of the Mediterranean region since antiquity, with its heavy reliance on plant-sourced ingredients, including fruits and vegetables, whole grains, pulses, nuts and seeds, and an abundance of olive oil. However, the healthfulness of this dietary pattern only started to receive some early attention in the scientific and public health communities in Europe and the United States after World War II, with the publication of the 1948 Rockefeller Foundation study documenting the healthfulness of the dietary pattern of post-war Crete, and more significantly, the landmark 7-country study by Ansel Keys, which began in 1956 and was published in 1978. Unfortunately, the early awareness of the healthfulness of the Mediterranean diet was vastly overshadowed in the 1980s by a widespread belief and consensus in the scientific and public health communities that a reduction in total fat to 30% of calories, or as some researchers asserted, to 20% of calories, should be a key pillar of dietary guidance in order to achieve significant reduction in the prevalence of diet-related chronic diseases. Also, much more positively, in the 1980s, Dr. Antonia Trikopoulou, then a researcher at the Athens School of Public Health, started to rekindle interest in the healthy Greek Mediterranean diet with her published research, building on the earlier work of Ansel Keys. We are so fortunate to have Antonio with us today, someone who was and is a critical protagonist in the scientific discovery work around the Mediterranean diet. It wasn't until the early 1990s, however, that a unique collaboration of individuals and organizations emerged across academic disciplines and professional interests. Just as a note, I'm not a scientist. I bring the food and culture and culinary history piece to the puzzle here. This unique collaboration that thoroughly disrupted the entrenched public health consensus around the supremacy of low-fat diets in promoting health, and created the foundation for the dramatic rise in the academic, public policy, media, and consumer interest in the Mediterranean diet that ensued over the past 3 decades. This collaboration, as was alluded to, co-led by top scientists and experts from Harvard T.H. Chan School of Public Health, both the departments of nutrition and epidemiology, WHO Regional Office for Europe, the Athens School of Public Health, the National Institute of Nutrition in Rome, and the Boston-based nonprofit Old Ways Preservation and Exchange Trust, of which I was a director at that time, resulted in the staging of 2 international academic conferences in 1993 and 1994 in the Boston area, the 1994 release of the Mediterranean Diet Pyramid, and a special edition of the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition in 1995, entirely devoted to the healthy Mediterranean Diet Pyramid. One of the key findings and insights from the review of the scientific evidence and analysis of the Mediterranean region leading up to the development of the Mediterranean diet was that patterns of chronic diseases, health, and adult life expectancy were less related to countries and were more of a function of the proximity to the olive-growing regions of the Mediterranean region. The initiative initially defined the Mediterranean diet as a model at the outset, based on the strongest available evidence at the time, as reflecting the food patterns of Crete, much of the rest of Greece, and southern Italy in the early 1960s. Now, these same food patterns existed and still exist in many cases throughout the Mediterranean region, from west to east and north to south. However, the examples of the differences in food, diet, and health patterns of, say, southern Italy in the early 1960s, where olive oil was the principal fat and meat consumption was low, versus northern Italy, where dairy fats predominate and meat was more abundant in the diet, underscored the importance of associating the reference model of the healthy Mediterranean diet with food and dietary patterns more than with the contours of political boundaries. A pattern similar to that of Italy can be observed, for instance, in Turkey, where you have coastal olive-growing regions versus the prevalence of animal fats in the interior north and east. In France, again, where you have coastal olive growing in Provence versus the prevalence of animal fats in the north of France. And you see this pattern in other parts of the Mediterranean as well. The diversity of healthy food and cooking across the Mediterranean, captured in the Mediterranean diet, is indeed stunning. Let's see. Okay. Here is a table of entirely plant-sourced ingredients we recently photographed in the region of Messina in the south of Greece. It's a plate of horta or wild greens with olive oil, also from Greece. Greens with olive oil also made an appearance in this pasta dish from Puglia in the south of Italy. In Istanbul, a plate of meze crafted entirely from pulses, vegetables, and olive oil delights customers. In Morocco, this is actually at a truck stop near Casablanca. Chicken tagines with olives and preserved lemons await diners. And in the south of Spain, what could be better on a hot day than a bowl of chilled salmorejo, the perfect marriage of tomatoes and olive oil? The release of the original Mediterranean diet pyramid in 1994, pictured on the right, stood in sharp contrast to the influential USDA food guide pyramid, with its greater emphasis on the consumption of meat and dairy and its admonition to lower total fat. The Mediterranean diet also, on the right, again, prioritized nuts and legumes, or pulses, as plant proteins, took them out of the meat category, and it prioritized those in general over animal-based proteins in the USDA pyramid. Once launched, the Mediterranean diet became a communication symbol, an accelerator, if you will, that changed research agendas, dietary guidance, restaurant menus, and home cooking preferences in the United States, Europe, and well beyond. Now, importantly, the greater visibility and scientific endorsement of the Mediterranean diet also created a powerful statement about the possibility that had been doubted by many people that optimal nutrition and deliciousness could be fully compatible. In fact, as we now know, they can be natural, even spectacular partners. Many, well beyond the Mediterranean region, have been inspired in recent years to adopt Mediterranean culinary approaches and techniques for transforming vegetables and sources of plant proteins from chickpeas, beans, lentils, nuts and seeds, whole grains into new family favorites. They have discovered the appeal of olive oil and the rich spectrum of extra virgin olive oils and their uses in everything from dressings and sauce making to sauteing, frying, and in healthier desserts. The Mediterranean diet collaboration in the 1990s demonstrated the value of scientists and public health leaders working in partnership with chefs and other culinary experts in order to grasp wider contexts of food cultures and drive change. This collaboration on the Mediterranean diet also spurred greater interest more broadly in the adaptation of the principles of the Mediterranean diet well beyond the Mediterranean basin, as well as in other cultural models for healthy eating from outside of the Mediterranean, principally from Asia, Africa, and Latin America. Further, the fact that olive cultivation and olive oil production now exists in the United States, Latin America, Asia, and Eastern Europe is a testament to the strength of the evidence supporting the healthfulness of the Mediterranean diet and the wide appeal of Mediterranean foods and flavors. Cultural models for healthy eating, including the Mediterranean diet, need to be understood in their historical context, but at the same time be open to enhancement in light of the findings of ongoing scientific research on diet and chronic disease links, and because of developments such as the emergence of sedentary lifestyles that has changed the calculus of what might be considered optimal in adapting and updating a given culturally rooted dietary pattern. The issue of carbohydrate quality, the need for populations everywhere to focus more on whole, intact grains and slow metabolizing, minimally processed carbohydrate-rich foods when consuming carbohydrates, is one such example of this. Fortunately, in the Mediterranean regions, at least I'm seeing that whole grains are starting to make at least an initial resurgence, bringing back old traditions and reminding us, for example, of the deliciousness of the dakos in Crete that in fact never went away. whole grain barley rusk rehydrated with a bit of water and piled high with chopped summer-ripe tomatoes, some feta cheese, and liberal amounts of extra virgin olive oil. Of late, we are also gratified to see that the Mediterranean diet is increasingly being heralded for its sustainability profile, from its lower carbon footprint to its inherent preservation of biodiversity, as earlier speakers referenced. At the center of the Mediterranean food systems are hundreds of millions of olive trees that serve as a carbon sink and barrier to desertification, and this is the other point that the olive oil sector needs to really emphasize. It's not just the trees, it's not just the olive groves, it's also that the oil makes low carbon plant forward food choices competitive in taste with high carbon animal-based foods and flavors in the minds of so many. So it's the job that the olive oil does, as well as the plants and the groves themselves. At the Culinary Institute of America, we have long been inspired by the Mediterranean diet as a prime iconic example of the nexus of food and culture, nutrition, environmental science, and culinary insight. Over many years, the CIA and the Harvard T.H. Chan School of Public Health, Department of Nutrition, have jointly presented program initiatives inspired by the Mediterranean diet and its broad principles, including Healthy Kitchens, Healthy Lives, our Menus of Change National Leadership Summit, for audiences ranging from chefs, food business leaders, K through 12 school food service directors to physicians and healthcare professionals. Next November, we're staging our 27th annual Worlds of Flavor International Conference and Festival, entirely devoted to the culinary traditions of the Mediterranean. Here in Spain, our Torre Barra Mediterranean Center, a joint project of the CIA and the University of Barcelona, includes our annual Tomorrow Tastes Mediterranean Conference series, now alternating between Spain and Greece, deepens our commitment to continue to elevate the UNESCO recognized World Heritage Mediterranean Diet and also secure its place in global dialogues about healthy, sustainable food systems. In that program series, we peel back what we call peel back the layers of the onion, as it were, to make as to what makes the culinary techniques and flavor dynamics of this region really work from a culinary standpoint, from both a chef's and consumer standpoint. At the same time, we look to connect this heritage and global parallels with other culturally rooted models of healthy eating in both the global north and the global south. Twice per year, our Torre Barra Mediterranean Center welcomes CIA bachelor's degree students from our New York campus to come to Spain for a 15-week Mediterranean concentration based in Barcelona with cultural and culinary immersion experiences in Andalusia. In 2024, we faced the larger challenge of defining and popularizing planetary health diets that address the critical question of how to feed a projected population of nearly 10 billion people in 2050, a diet that is both healthy and sustainable. This is a challenge whose broad architecture of issues and solutions is being ably mapped out by the Eat Lancet Commission on Food, Planet, and Health in their upcoming 2.0 report to be published later next year. The traditional Mediterranean diet and food system, with its roots in olive cultivation stretching back many millennia, is, of course, a prime example of the planetary health diet that speaks to the sustainability challenges that we face today. And I believe that Professor Willett will be talking more about this a little bit later in the program. Now, more than ever, as we work to translate the framework of the planetary health diet, including the Mediterranean diet, into action, into greater action, we need to emphasize the value of cross-disciplinary and cross-cultural collaboration to elevate food choices, menus, dietary patterns, and food systems that are at once accessible and fully appealing to individuals and families everywhere, and that meet the imperatives of our time. The more that scientists, public health leaders, and medical experts can partner with chefs and other culinary experts and cultural leaders, the closer we will get to a delicious, healthy, and sustainable future. And just as we need to invite scientists, public health experts, and government leaders to work more closely with chefs and culinary professionals to make sure that we translate our best science and policy into appealing results at the dinner table, we also collectively need to elevate quality and excellence in agriculture and food production as a public health priority. For example, if and when we lose deliciousness in fruits and vegetables or other foods and ingredients that are the very foundation of the Mediterranean diet because of production and distribution demands and of increasingly complex supply chains, our mission will fail. As I've often said, the unapologetic elevation of deliciousness from farm to table needs to be a broad public health imperative. Finally, in closing, a word about the International Olive Council. Throughout especially the 1990s and continuing until this day, the IOC has played a pivotal role in not only helping to raise the visibility about the healthfulness of olive oil, but also the entirety of the healthy Mediterranean dietary pattern and Mediterranean food culture and lifestyle. They have been a great connector of people and organizations who care about this world heritage and want to see it continue. Not as summarized in a report on a dusty library shelf or as a museum piece, but as a thriving contemporary entity that supports rural communities throughout the Mediterranean and now around the world, that provides a model of healthy diet and lifestyle with wide appeal, and that stands as a critical, inspiring reference as we work to transform our food systems for planetary health. To the leadership and membership of the IOC, I say thank you, and I wish you all success for the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Drexler. Let's continue our session with the next speaker. The next speaker is Antonia Trichopoulou. I am going to introduce a brief summary of her CV. Antonia Trichopoulou is a medicine doctor, a member of the Academic of Athens, professor adjunct at Yale University. Her scientific work focuses on public health and nutritional epidemiology, emphasizing the health effects of the Mediterranean diet and traditional foods. In 2011, she received the Federation of European Nutrition Societies Award for her outstanding nutritionist career. Named in Thomson Reuters 2014 World's Most Influential Scientific Minds list and awarded as a highly cited researcher by Clarivate Analytics in 2018 and 2021, culminating in being decorated with the Golden Cross of Honor for work in preventive medicine and nutrition by the President of the Greek Republic. It's a great honor for us. Welcome to Antonia Trichopoulou. You can say.
Good morning to everybody, distinguished audience, dear colleagues and friends. It's really a privilege and a great pleasure to participate in this conference, and really I thank with all my heart the organizer for giving me the opportunity to be here and to talk about Mediterranean diet, a topic which expresses both my scientific beliefs as well as my love for the Mediterranean way of living. Having said that, I wish to remember you that Mediterranean diet is deeply rooted in history. It has been evolved by optimizing the use of land, the use of local available products. Also, it was influenced by cultural and religious habits, and was given to us after many centuries, if not millennia, of elaborating it by thousands of people in the Mediterranean region. And in addition to that, sorry, I'm going something wrong. Can you help me how to proceed? Oh, what to press? This one, I don't have enough power. So I wish to remind you also that the Mediterranean diet of today is an integral part of the ancient times. And in many aspects, we can trace the roots of our foods. Here in this slide, you can see a cup of olives, which they were found in excavation in Crete, and then they dated more than 5 years ago. They were used the same way we are using today, in a bowl, black olives. And in addition to that, I don't know if you have power. There. So in addition to that, you can see the way the olive trees, they are collected today in many parts of the Mediterranean area, yet, and the way they were used 5,000 years ago somewhere in the Mediterranean region. So, no. Next, please. Okay. So I am coming to a fragment of a saying of a philosopher who lived 500 years before Christ, Aristhenes. And he said that archipedepsios in τον onomaton episkepsis in Greek. This is Greek for you. Even for me, it's difficult. The beginning, which in English is the beginning of a right education, is the examination of words. Why I presented this fragment today? Because the term of Mediterranean diet has been more than often misused, either intentionally or unintentionally. So at least in the today presentation, when I'm talking about Mediterranean diet, I'm talking about traditional Mediterranean diet, not Mediterranean type diet, not Mediterranean diet of today, because things after the 60s, they change a lot. Many socioeconomic changes, they happen all around in the world, including in the Mediterranean area, and our dietary habits dramatically changed. Thus, what we could define as Mediterranean diet, the dietary pattern found in the olive-grown areas of the Mediterranean regions of the late 50s and early 60s. But why I'm saying in the olive-grown areas? Because, my dear colleagues, you know that Mediterranean diet cannot exist without olive oil. It's the center of the Mediterranean diet. Next, please. So I am coming back, according to the title of my presentation, to Crete. Crete is considered the cradle of the Mediterranean diet. And let's see what was said by a scholar, a British scholar who visited Greece in the 18th century. He left a very big book, and in which is written that in Crete, the evening meal was a dish of wild greens. It was very, very, very well presented by my colleague and friend, Dr. Greg Drescher, before, the value of the wild greens and how we use the wild greens. Well, which seems to be their main diet. They boil them and add olive oil, bread, olives, and sometimes cheese. Remember the pyramid. Milk products in moderation. Complement their meals. A mother will rarely give bread to her child without putting olive on a plate to soak. I did that the same in my hotel. I put olive oil on bread and then on the top of tomato sauce to soak in this liquid of life. I have never seen a better description of olive oil than this one, which was done by a British. So, it makes it more delicious. I mean, taste is not ignored. And before, Greg mentioned that for the 7th consecutive years, the Mediterranean diet was elected as the best diet in the world, not only because it is safe, not only because it's healthy, but also because it's tasty, and we should not ignore that. Then this British author continued by saying that oil is used with all kinds of vegetables, as well as in the preparation of all kinds of meat and fish. In short, it's go into all dishes. I have to tell you, my colleagues, that in my kitchen there is nothing other fat except olive oil. And I'm saying fat because it does not reflect what is olive oil. We should speak about fat and oils. But by using the word fat happened what Greg said before. In the Northern European countries, the Central Europe in the 80s, they said reduce fat without taking under consideration that we in the South were eating olive oil, which was not fat. But olive oil was considered as fat. Next, please. Then, 1 century later, the Rockefeller Foundation visited Greece in order to help Crete, more specifically Crete, but the whole Greece at that time was in ruins in 1847, because the Second World War was followed in Greece by a detrimental civil war. So the people Greece was really in ruin. And this group came there to study and to see how they could help. And then, of course, the very first thing which they did was to register what this population underdeveloped. I didn't like this term. They should add maybe economically underdeveloped. And whenever we use the term underdeveloped, we have to clarify if we mean economically or in other terms. Nevertheless, they came to help this, and they did an excellent job. And it's very good. I hope soon to publish their data, because I have the original questionnaire and the original approach for this study. But then, after the study, they said, please, next to this, the food consumption levels were surprisingly good. On the whole, their food pattern and food habits were extremely well adapted to their natural and economic resources, as well as to their needs. Also, in this sentence, you can recognize also the sustainability and the sustainability aspects of the Mediterranean diet. They are included. They say, well adapted to their national and economic resources, as well as their needs. Next, please. Then, the very same time, a talented medical doctor from Minnesota University, from the United States, was puzzled because in the United States, the incidence of coronary heart disease were very high, but not in the Mediterranean region. Then he set a study because he considered diet as one of the main risk factors for this observed difference in the incidence of coronary heart disease. Next, please. And then I will be a little more analytical in this paper, because you can see here that Finland is the E on the right top, I think, yes. And Crete is decay down, down, down. They have very low incidence of coronary heart disease. Crete in this time has the lowest mortality from all the cohorts participated in the study, and Finland has the highest. And Greece, it was very high in fat intake, and Finland was relatively low. But, next please. What was the results of the key study was that it was actually the first considered by Ansel Keys, and it was Ansel Keys developed the term Mediterranean diet. But he said that for this difference in mortality, the main reason was that the low saturated content of the Cretan population provided protection against coronary heart disease by lowering plasma cholesterol levels. Answer is never mention olive oil. Olive oil in answer is equation is natural, was never taken under account. As a result of that, and I think it was great, the Finnish, they said, come on, we have to reduce our saturated fat. What to do? To reduce meat, to reduce lard, to reduce butter. And how to replace that? What else? With seed oils. Excellent, fantastic. And really, they have fantastic results. They reduce their mortality rate from cardiovascular disease. But what happened in the South? In the South, then they start promoting seed oils. And then in Greece, they start advocating, get rid of olive oil and cook these seed oils. And then we start cutting the trees. It was at this time, I was very young, we were desperate. And we didn't have data, but we were seeing that our traditional diet, next please, our traditional diet and the use of olive tree, the olive oil, we were cutting the tree. Even the same happened to a certain extent I don't think that it was Israel. In Israel, Palestine, it was, and then in Cyprus, because in Cyprus I went preaching for olive oil at this time. And then we invited, that's why we did the first meeting. It was very successful in order to inform the scientific community of Greece about the value of olive oil. It's eleolado and tigia, it's olive oil and health. And then on the very left, you can see Grante Covian. I'm sorry, it's the only picture I have from this event. Grante Covian was a big personality in Spain. He was a collaborator of Anselm, and he was really a believer in olive oil. I hope that many of you have met him. I think that now he's dead. So when I sent him a letter, gladly he came. As well, he came, and then it's the involvement of Harvard. Professor McMahon, it is 1, 2, 3, the third on my left, and then it's my late husband, Dimitrios Trichopoulos. Then, well, the desperation continued, and we were trying to push for the Mediterranean diet, and then we developed a conference in Delphi. Delphi is the center of the world, or in a way, we say that. And then we develop, and then it's indicative, the title of this word, in 86, the Mediterranean diet and food culture. And from that time, we were discussing about the link between Mediterranean diet and food culture, because this is what we were perceiving in Greece. It was not so much the healthy purposes, but it was the culture. And then the subtitle was what, why, and how. And we were talking in 86 for Mediterranean diet. And then it was in the picture, you see on the left, the late Elizabeth Helfing, which was Greg Drescher, they were main developers of the Mediterranean diet pyramid. She was at that time officer in WHO. She was really a believer, although she was Norwegian. And from the first time, she was really a great help, and she opened doors, being the World Health Organization. And then in the middle is Professor John Waterlow. At that time, we were in desperation. We were trying to find support. We were trying to find believers in the Mediterranean diet. And then, but John Waterlow, his father was ambassador in Greece, and he was brought up in Greece, and he knew Greece very well. So I knew him, and I said, this is the situation. And he said, Antonia, we'll find, we need data. They were asking by everybody. Bring Antonia data. What are you saying? It's fattening the Mediterranean diet. It's good, the seed oils, and so on. And then John, when I don't know how many months he spent in the British libraries in order to find out what the Roman and the Greek soldiers they were eating, because he wanted he said that finally in this report is publish his work, because they could, if a soldier was not healthy, he could not gain the war. So he provided data about the Mediterranean way of feeding the soldiers, the Romans and the Greeks. Next, please. But then it happened, and this is the turning point. In 1991, unfortunately, I have no picture of this event. In Porto Caras, an international symposium on the foods and wines of Greece. And then I met for the first time in my life Greg Drescher. And then Greg Drescher, from the beginning, I don't know, he has to explain it to us why he was so much impressed from the Mediterranean diet, and he was asking more information. So after that, my husband at that time was director of the Department of Epidemiology at Harvard. He was very friend of Dr. Willett, and he was friend also with the Dean Feinberg. And then the miracle happened. Next, please. It was organized at Harvard in presence of Ansel Keys, the meeting which we celebrate today. After that, things were not so easy, but Mediterranean diet was there. And as Greg mentioned before, then we have to fight. Everybody was saying, yes, it's good, it's tasty, it's healthy, but it's fattening. It's very high in fat. We were telling them that, you know, this is 40 or 35% of calories on a daily menu. Assure that you take a lot of vegetables. You cannot eat, as you try in the United States, to eat a raw zucchini, a raw eggplant. But if you cook eggplant with olive oil and with all the other herbs, aromatic herbs, it's tasty, and you can consume 200 eggplants or okra easily. So, but next, please. So this is the original pyramid, which the very, very first version. And I remember Greg going from to Elizabeth to me to Willett and saying, well, I mean, this way or the other way, till the final form of the pyramid was developed. And then it was an exponential increase in paper related to Mediterranean diet. And then, next, please. Next. And then we published a paper based on a small elderly cohort of Greeks, small prospective studies. And it was the very first time we applied the Mediterranean diet score. Why I'm saying that? Because till then, we didn't have a way to measure the adherence to Mediterranean diet, as well as to define the Mediterranean diet. Next, please. And then all around Europe, and at this point I have really, again, for many reasons, I have to thank the Olive Oil Council, but at this period was very, very, very supportive. They were supportive several meetings all around the world, as it was also the Mediterranean Agricultural Institute later in time. But I am mentioning specifically this second forum, which took place in 2002, because it was the first time, it was a common meeting between the people, the health people, and the people from literature, from the classics. And we could not find a way to collaborate, because they were saying, why? Mediterranean diet has to do nothing with health. And we were saying, well, okay, but it has to do with tradition, but of course it's not only tradition. And this was a very constructive, although I remember we were saying the meeting took place in Reggio di Calabria till 2 o'clock in the morning in order to write a consensus report. Next, please. But of course, it will be an omission if I will not mention the always president at that time, Dan Guilford. You see him in the and also the former Olive Oil Council President Director, Dr. Lucchetti, who is very, very supportive in all the activities referring to olive oil. Next, please. Here is, on the left is the old ways president. Now he's late, and then Dr. Lucchetti on the left. Next, please. What is that? Well, I was mentioning that with the help of Olive Oil Council, many meetings they were organized all around the world. In China, you see here, we have been in China in 2001. Unbelievable. And we were exposed and we were trying to find out ways in order to use olive oil in the walks. And then we collaborated also with some persons, cooks in China. Also, they were organizing meetings in Thailand, in Japan, all over Europe, in the United States. Well, this decade was very, very active in publicizing the results of the Mediterranean diet. Next, please. So it will be an omission if we do not mention the meetings which organized also here in Spain, in Cordoba. And I wish to mention also this report, was a consensus report after a meeting or two meetings, I don't know, we work a lot on that, which I have the impression that this report was instrumental for approving the health claim for olive oil by the European Commission. Next, please. So, we talk about, and also Greg mentioned that for the decade of the 90s, we have the problem that yes, the Mediterranean diet is good after the 93 meeting in Boston, but it's fattening. It's fattening. Thanks God. I mean, it was published a paper in the New England Journal of Medicine by Frank Sachs and many other colleagues from Harvard, which say that, okay, look, it's the calorie which counts for obesity, not the macronutrients. And later on, we were saying it's the type of fat which is important for your health. But this was, I choose some papers which really they were instrumental in continuing, I mean, the international acceptance of the Mediterranean diet. Next, please. Well, another turning point was the acceptance, the inclusion of the Mediterranean diet to intangible cultural heritage for humanity, and which they say that Mediterranean diet is a social practice based on the set of skill, knowledge, practices, and tradition. Quite often in the medical science, we forget that how important is the way food is produced, the way food is consumed. It's a social science. This was the big opening, next, for the Mediterranean now not to be only a healthy diet, but to be a sustainable diet. This is the big turn of our decade. And keep in mind, and I want to tell you that this is very important, and we didn't speak about climatic change, that here in southern Crete, the olive tree, they produce flower, but not olives. Because as the experts, they say they're not exposed, I don't know, so many hours in a temperature under 10 degrees Celsius. So this is an issue which clearly has to be dealt in the future by all of us. In Crete, they say the expert, the South Crete, at least in 10 years, it's going to become desert. So I don't know if it's true or not, but I'm repeating because we have to be aware of that, since you say, from the cradle to Mediterranean diet to today. So next, please. So it was mentioned that Mediterranean diet it's very accepted all over the world. Next, please. So based on that, we thought that it's good some lessons of the Mediterranean diet, to be shared. To be shared with other parts of the world. We don't mean that we have to ask the people in Africa to eat the Mediterranean way, or the people in Scandinavia to eat watermelons in the summer. But some lesson of the Mediterranean diet can be learned, like increase fruit, increase vegetables, and know how to cook in order to increase the consumption. And Mediterranean diet is locally consumes, locally produced, locally consumed. This is the essence. We said that Mediterranean diet was evolved by optimizing the land, by using the available products. So there are two papers, very briefly. I know that I have only 2 minutes left, which I want to draw to your attention. The next, please. The one talk about the planetary diet, the Planetarian diet in relation to Mediterranean diet, and they developed the pyramids based on local products. For example, in Africa, they recommend the use of moringa, which is an olive oil produced by the fruits of a plant, which is very high in olive oil, or teff, a grain which has more concentrated protein than our cereals. And the other paper is that the planetary diet, which produced again by our Harvard group, and then they organized what was proposed by the old ways in the decade of the 90s, very early 20s, in order to develop pyramids for various parts of the world, but based on the Mediterranean diet concept. Next, please. What I want to stress before closing my presentation is that, okay, the epidemiological data are concordant and suggest that the Mediterranean diet degrees is good for our health. But we as scientists, we do not know the underpinning mechanism or mechanisms which are responsible for these beneficial effects. And I think that you have to look much more to the traditional foods. Because to the traditional foods, we are exposed every day to the local products and to the way they are prepared. Next, please. It would be a great omission if I'm not going also for the future and for some similar works which they are underway and they open a new paths. The one is the Predimed, the results of Predimed, which one or another way continue. And the Lancet Eat report, which deals with sustainable diet, and ask for us to act in order to save not only our health, but our planet. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Trichoplou. And now let's continue with our scientist session. And the next speaker is Miguel Ángel Martínez González, medicine doctor and PhD, is professor of public health, Universidad de Navarra, España, and adjunct professor at Harvard School of Public Health and Nutrition area. Founder of the Department of Public Health at the Universidad de Navarra, and principal investigator of large cohorts and randomized trials, Predimed, Predimed Plus, and Unity projects. He was co-PI with Frank Hu, our next speaker too, in several NIH-funded grants on cardiometabolic disease and metabolomics. He has published more than 1,400 articles and abstracts indexed in the Web of Science, and has been mentor of a large group of full professors and associate professors of epidemiology and public health. Thank you very much for being here. We are going to welcome, come up to the stage, to Professor Martínez González. Have the floor. Thank you very much.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for your presentation, your introduction, and your nice invitation, especially to the Olive Oil Council and also to the CIHEAM and also to the National Research Council, the CSIC, for their kind invitation to give this talk that is so impressive for me, because we are 30 years after the Mediterranean diet pyramid. But first of all, I want to acknowledge my collaborators in the PREDIMED study and further studies continuing the PREDIMED with metabolomics. So usually I tended to put this slide, these photographs and these names at the end of my presentation, but as time goes by, I think that what they have done is considerably more important to what I have done, and it is worthwhile to say first thank you to all of them at the beginning of my presentation, because the merit is deserved by them. So I have no conflicts of interest, and this is the outline that I'm going to follow. The aim of this presentation is to show some results of the main landmark trials developed in 30 years after the Mediterranean diet pyramid. So I will speak only about 4 of them: PREDIMED, CardioPrep, PREDIMED Plus, and UNATI. They are landmark trials, and it is really impressive how much science has been produced about the Mediterranean diet during these 30 years. And we are not speaking of preliminary science or something that is just a correlation. We are speaking of the best evidence that we may have in science, that is the randomized controlled trials. So what I would say here, what I will say here, is about a large randomized trials. So first of all, PREDIMED. I think that many of you are familiar with PREDIMED. So we are here. We are in the upper part of the flow chart of the science, the classification of the science in epidemiology. So we are in the experimental field. So then the upper we go, the better the evidence. So we were conducting a field trial. It is not a clinical trial. It is with healthy people at risk, at high risk. So what we did in PREDIMED was for the first time to conduct a large randomized trial with an overall dietary pattern. So we included men and women from 55 to 80 without previous cardiovascular disease, but with type 2 diabetes or at least 3 major cardiovascular risk factors. And we randomly assigned them to the control diet that was the paradigm at that time, that was the state of the art at that time. We started the PREDIMED in 2003, so 21 years ago. At that time, the paradigm for a healthy diet was a low-fat diet recommended by the American Heart Association. That was the control diet, and we allocated the rest of the sample to Mediterranean diet. In one of them, we provided for free 15 liters of extra virgin olive oil every 3 months, and in the other group, a provision of nuts for consuming 30 grams of tree nuts every day. So after 5 years, we tested what was the effect, the comparative effect of the 3 diets on myocardial infarction, cerebrovascular disease, and cardiovascular death. This is the and best scientific evidence on the Mediterranean, on the benefits of the Mediterranean diet so far. So you see that we did the intervention. We repeated contacts every 3 months with dietitians, with trained dietitians. So we recommended first exclusively in the Mediterranean diet plus extra virgin olive oil, and in the Mediterranean diet plus nuts, we recommended to use exclusively olive oil for all culinary purposes, to consume at least 4 tablespoons of olive oil, to consume every day 3 pieces of fruit, 2 servings of vegetables, 1 of them as a salad, 1 glass of wine if they were drinkers, and 3 servings per week of 3 nuts, fish or seafood, legumes, and to consume sofrito, a special Mediterranean sauce, at least twice per week, and to prefer poultry instead of red or processed meats. And we discourage the consumption of sodas, cookies, commercial bakery, red and processed meats, and cream, margarine, or butter. So I highlight here the consumption of 1 glass of wine with meals, 1 glass of wine with meals, at least 1 or 2 glasses of wine with meals. And that this is highly controversial nowadays. So I will address this issue later. So this 14-item score called MIDAS, Mediterranean Diet Adherence Screener, has been replicated and validated in many countries, particularly in the US with metabolomics studies. So what we found after repeating the advices, after 5 years, every 3 months, contacts with the participants, we found a 28% reduction in the risk of the primary endpoint with Mediterranean diet plus nuts, and 31% reduction, relative reduction, with Mediterranean diet plus extra virgin olive oil. So we stopped prematurely the trial because of this successful result. But we also found a reduction in peripheral artery disease, very, very strong reduction with extra virgin olive oil, and also a significant reduction with 3 nuts. We found a reduction in the main arrhythmia, in atrial fibrillation, only with extra virgin olive oil. We found a reduction in diabetes of 40% with Mediterranean diet, 40% relatively less new cases of diabetes among those, about 50% of them, among those who were not diabetics at baseline, and 18% reduction with the Mediterranean diet plus nuts. We have recently go further. We have been going further in the adherence to the Mediterranean diet with repeated measurements every year. This is unique, to have a full-length FFQ every year and to know whether or not they were following correctly the Mediterranean diet. So even people in the control group who were following this MIDAS closely, they have a considerably lower risk of diabetes during the follow-up. So for breast cancer, we need to acknowledge that the number of cases, fortunately for our patients, for our female patients, the number of cases was very low, but we observe a significant reduction with Mediterranean diet and extra virgin olive oil. In both atrial fibrillation and breast cancer, that we observed the effect only with the Mediterranean diet plus extra virgin olive oil, we did a detailed dose response analysis, and we saw that the higher the intake of extra virgin olive oil, the lower the risk during the follow-up time. And also, we observed benefits for cognitive function in this paper, and another paper conducted in these assessments were only conducted in Barcelona and Pamplona. We have 11 centers. And in these centers, we did a thorough evaluation of the cognitive function. And we found, especially for extra virgin olive oil, improvements in global and frontal function. So these results were subsequently replicated. In PREDIMED, everybody was free of previous cardiovascular disease, but we were advisors of another large trial. You see, 7 years follow-up, more than 1 decade working with these patients. This is the CardioPrep trial conducted in southern Spain by a single center, Córdoba University. The participants were from 20 to 75 years old, and all of them were survivors of a previous myocardial infarction. They have only 2 arms in the trial, low-fat diet or Mediterranean diet plus extra virgin olive oil, and they followed very closely the protocol of intervention and everything as in Predimed, and they found a 27% relative reduction in the risk of a composite primary endpoints of several major cardiovascular outcomes. So this is an independent replication using basically the same methods for the intervention that we use in Predimed, but in secondary prevention. So Predimed Plus, what is the rationale for Predimed Plus? So if you look at this map, this was the prevalence of obesity in girls from 5 to 19 years old. You see in green is like 5%, in blue is less than 5%, 1 or 2% of obesity in girls in 1975. But if we look several years later to the map, you see how things have changed in the world. So we are in a pandemic of obesity. The COVID-19 pandemic is out, so it went by, but now we have the 21st century pandemic is obesity, and it is here to stay. So we have a severe problem. So Predimed Plus thinks in this. You see in the United States, the prevalence of self-reported obesity in 2016, and things are getting worse and worse in the United States 6 years later. And these are the projections for 2030. Also with a growing prevalence of morbid obesity. So what is the reason why this is happening? What is the reason? We cannot blame the clinical doctors. We need to blame all the people as me working in public health. We need to acknowledge that we did badly our job. We have been always arriving late. So this is the problem. In public health, in epidemiology, we are arriving late. So we designed in 2012, first Estefania Toledo went for 6 months. Estefania Toledo is a professor, a young professor working at our university in Navarra. She went to Harvard for 6 months in 2012. Then I also went there. We received a lot of inputs from the professors of the Harvard School of Public Health, including Frank Hu, Walter Willett, Franz Sachs, Alberto Askerio, Eric Green, Darius Mozaffarian, Mayor Stanford, of course. He has been deeply involved in this trial. So, and we designed a trial going beyond the Mediterranean diet. So this is the meaning of Predimed Plus. So we designed this trial in 2012, comparing the traditional Mediterranean diet as the control group, and now we were adding to the Mediterranean diet several new things. The frugality of the Mediterranean diet, you see how few things in the plate, so reducing the size of the servings, reducing the energy intake, promoting physical activity, and providing also behavioral and motivational support for weight loss in people who were overweight and had metabolic syndrome. So this is Predimed Plus. We started in 2013. This is the cohort profile that you can find all the design and methods here. And we incorporated 23 centers, not 11 as we did in Predimed. In Predimed Plus, we have 23 centers. You have the number of recruited participants, almost 7,000. So we started in our center as the Vanguard Center in 2013, and other centers were incorporated 2014, 2015, 2016. And this is the participants were randomly allocated to either just the Mediterranean diet without any energy restriction, any goal for weight loss, any physical activity, just Mediterranean diet, or adding the plus. So the intervention has been maintained already for 6 years, but we decided to add 2 further years for observation without intervention. So we started in 2013, and after 11 years, this December, in 1 month's time, we will finish the follow-up of all our participants, and we will obtain the definitive results. So you can await some nice papers in 2025 with the results of PREDIMED Plus. So far, this is the most important paper that we published. This was just after 1 year follow-up. This was published in JAMA. This is extraordinary to publish a paper with interim results in such a journal as JAMA with the results. So we observed first that we were able to modify the overall dietary pattern. So here is very similar to the 14 points, but the points that are in white font are the points where we added the avoidance of foods that may increase your weight, and also to reduce the calorie intake. So we were reducing sugary beverages a lot more than in PREDIMED 1. We were reducing white bread. This was new, increasing whole grains, reducing refined grains, rice and pasta. And we were also adding wine here, only for those who were drinkers at baseline. That was the design. And what we observed, we have here in the upper part, you have the intervention, and I am blinding the result that was at baseline, and in the control group in the lower part of the slide. And after 1 year, you see, this is the distribution of the 17 points of adherence to the intended diet. So we saw a strong change, a very strong change, very dramatic change with the intervention in the intervention group, but not so much in the control group. So we were able to modify with the intervention by the dietitians. Here it was more intense. We were able to modify the overall dietary pattern. So you can see here, So that was at baseline, that was after 1 year. So it was a lot of change. And this change was parallel with changes in risk factors. So changes in risk factors, all of them were, this is not a confidence interval, this is the full distribution of the risk factor. So you see here the main risk factors, also the indexes of adiposity, and with the exception of LDL, everything was in the expected direction. And this is very important. This is really very important. In almost every trial for weight loss is got after 6 months on 1 year, and then there is a regain. Here, with the Mediterranean diet, because it has been said, it is tasty, it is palatable, you can enjoy it. So we didn't observe any regain. The weight loss was maintained after so many years. So this is a very important finding with the Mediterranean diet, reducing calories, so for weight loss. And then in this paper, we observed that also the body fat distribution was in the expected direction with a reduction in visceral fat with the intervention as compared to the control, and also with the total lean mass increased with the physical activity program and the reduction in calories in the intervention group. So now I am going to speak of the 4th point very briefly because Raúl is telling me to end soon. So the UNATI, I will I need to skip the slides. So UNATI is, you know that there is a J-shaped association between alcohol and total mortality or cardiovascular disease, but now there is a controversy. I will skip this. So, for example, for breast cancer, there is no level of alcohol intake that is healthy. So previously I said 1 glass of wine per day. So are we doing harm? Should we remove wine from the Mediterranean diet? So in this paper published in Lancet in 2018, that was a comment of only 1.5 page saying no level of alcohol consumption improves health. So the message here in 1.5 page of Lancet in 2018 was forbid alcohol in any form, in any pattern for everybody. And this paper was just a comment of the original study of the global burden of disease. But the original study in the global burden of disease have like 25 pages. Most people read only the 1.5 page, but not the full report. So, and this message has been highly influential. So starting in 2018, many people working in public health started to repeat this mantra. You know what a mantra is? No level of alcohol consumption improves health. Repeat with me, no level of... this was what the papers and the media say. But the same group of the global burden of disease, 4 years later, with new data, they said small amounts of alcohol consumption are associated with improved health outcomes in population that predominantly face a high burden of cardiovascular diseases. So there is a need for precision medicine to stratify the message, because even in the same group, there is a controversy. They say different things just 4 years apart. So they define like 2 points, the theoretical minimum risk exposure level and the equivalence with non-drinkers. So here you have the standard drinks, they define this, and they propose like limits for both points in several regions of the world and according to age and sex. For example, here in Western Europe, where we are now, for women of 60 to 64 years old, the healthiest level is not 0, it's half a drink a day. So 3.5 drinks on average per week. And the equivalent with non-drinkers is 1.2 drinks per day. And it is even higher for a man of the same age. So it depends on age, because as you get older, you have a higher risk of ischemic heart disease and ischemic stroke. So it depends. But here, they said nothing about the drinking pattern. And we have several studies showing that red wine, for example, regarding inflammatory markers, red wine reduces them more than total wine or white wine or beer or liquors. Liquors even can increase some of the inflammatory biomarkers. And this is a very large study, mainly conducted in women in the Nurses' Health Study and Health Professional Follow-up. And there are a lot of studies showing benefits for wine, for red wine. For example, in this narrative review, they are reviewing a lot of epidemiologic studies showing benefits, particularly for red wine. And there are also systematic reviews conducted in Spain where they conclude that that there is an inverse relationship to cardiovascular mortality with wine, protective effect against cognitive decline, and no association with the occurrence of cancer, according to these systematic reviews of published epidemiologic studies. We defined 10 years ago the Mediterranean alcohol drinking pattern. So it consists in moderation, spreading the consumption over the week, consuming always alcohol with meals, not without meals, no binge drinking, and preference for wine. So, and we found that within constant levels of total alcohol consumption, there was a reduction in the risk of total mortality if you closely follow the Mediterranean alcohol drinking pattern. This was subsequently replicated in several studies. I'm going to... And Antonia Tricopoulou, this study of the anatomy of the health effects of the Mediterranean diet. So if you remove from the Mediterranean diet moderate ethanol consumption, you are going to lose 23.5% of the protective effect against total mortality. So this is something that we may not lose. So, well, I'm going to... You know, the largest trials, randomized trials ever conducted on the effects of alcohol on health are these 3 trials. The largest one with 224 participants. So we are conducting, I will finish here. We are conducting a new trial called UNATI, University of Navarra Alumni Trialist Initiative. This was funded by the European Research Council with an advanced research grant, where we compare under a non-inferiority paradigm, moderate drinking pattern according to the Mediterranean alcohol drinking pattern versus abstention in drinkers from 50 to 75 years old. And our aim is to recruit 10,000 drinkers. We started the recruitment before the summer, and we have recruited so far 2,000 volunteers, and we have randomized them, and we are doing the intervention. We expect to complete the recruitment at the end of June 25, and we will follow up then until the end of 2028. So in 2029, I promise that I may come here again to tell you the results. Thank you very much for your attention. Perdón, ¿qué me he pasado?
Thank you very much, Professor Martínez González, for your comments. The last project, because we are olive oil lovers, but we are wine lovers too. So I hope the results will confirm our expectations. Anyway, let's follow with the next speaker. Our next speaker is Frank Wu. He's a medicine doctor, master in public health, and PhD is the Frederick J. Ster Professor of Nutrition and Epidemiology and Chair of the Department of Nutrition at the Harvard T.H. Chan School of Public Health. He's also Professor of Medicine at Harvard Medical School and Brigham and Women's Hospital. His major research interests include epidemiology and prevention of cardiometabolic diseases through diet and lifestyle, gene-environment interaction, and risk of obesity and type 2 diabetes. Nutritional metabolomics in type 2 diabetes and cardiovascular disease, and nutrition transition, metabolic phenotypes, and cardiovascular disease in low and middle income countries. Dr. Hu serves as Director of Dietary Biomarker Development Center and co-director of Obesity Epidemiology and Prevention Program at Harvard. Dr. Hu is the recipient of the Kelly West Award for Outstanding Achievement in Epidemiology by the American Diabetes Association in 2010. He was named the American Heart Association Ansel Keys Memorial Lecturer in 2018. He has published a textbook on obesity epidemiology and more than 1,500 peer-reviewed papers with an H index of 318. Dr. Hu served on the 2015 Dietary Guidelines Advisory Committee of the USDA Health and Human Services. He has served on the editorial advisory board of The Lancet Diabetes and Endocrinology, Diabetes Care and Clinical Chemistry. Dr. Hu is a member of National Academy of Medicine. Thank you very much for being here. welcome to you. You come out on the stage. It's a pleasure.
Okay, good morning. It's really an honor for me to speak at this really important conference. First of all, I want to pay tribute to our colleagues, Greg, Antonia, and also Walter Willett for their vision and the leadership in developing the Mediterranean diet pyramid more than 30 years ago. So this is truly a milestone in nutrition and also in public health. So today I'm going to discuss what kind of scientific evidence that we have developed to unravel the secrets of the Mediterranean diet. As Antonia said earlier, we all know Mediterranean diet is good for you, but why? So the modern science can help us to better understand the biological mechanisms behind the Mediterranean diet. So as Greg and also Antonia mentioned earlier, for 7 years in a row, the Mediterranean diet has been ranked #1 best diet by the US Nielsen report. This is truly remarkable because 30 years ago, very few people in the US have heard the Mediterranean diet or followed Mediterranean diet. Very few people actually consumed olive oil at that time. But now, 30 years later, Mediterranean diet has become one of the most popular diets in the US. So the second place is the DASH diet, and then the third place is the MIND diet. MIND diet is basically the combination of the Mediterranean diet and the DASH diet. Most of the data I'm going to present come from our large cohort studies, the nurses' health studies. So far, we have collected detailed data on diet and lifestyle factors, health conditions among more than 300,000 women in 3 generations of nurses over 4 decades. So this study has become one of the longest running studies on diet and health in the world. Besides detailed data on diet and lifestyle, we have also collected millions of biospecimen samples, including blood samples, urine samples, stool samples, and even toenails. One of the most important findings from our cohort studies is that the type of fat or the quality of fat is more important than total amount of fat in our diet. As you can see here, trans fat is the worst type of diet fat. Saturated fat is also associated with increased risk of cardiovascular disease and mortality. On the other hand, monounsaturated fat and polyunsaturated fat from plant sources and also from fish associated with lower risk of cardiovascular disease and mortality. So this is, I think, one of the most important data to support the beneficial effects of the Mediterranean diet, because again, what we have found here is that the quality of fat or the type of fat is much more important than the total amount of fat in our diet. Consistent with those findings, we observed that some of the high-fat foods in our diet, like nuts, olive oil, and avocados, they're all very high-fat foods. They are actually associated with lower risk of cardiovascular disease and mortality. Other plant-based foods, such as fruits and vegetables, whole grains, are also associated with lower risk of chronic disease and mortality. Numerous epidemiological studies, including our cohorts, have observed that regular consumption of coffee is actually associated with a wide range of health benefits, including lower risk of diabetes, cardiovascular disease, gout, neurodegenerative disease such as Parkinson's disease and Alzheimer's disease, And regular consumption of coffee is also associated with lower risk of some cancers, especially liver cancer and endometrial cancer. So those data have been remarkably consistent across different populations and also across different types of coffees, including American coffee and also espresso. So I think this is really good news for a lot of people who drink coffee habitually. And it's also very important to understand why regular consumption of coffee is beneficial for various health outcomes. Of course, coffee contains not just caffeine, but also numerous bioactive compounds, such as polyphenols. Using longitudinal data, we examined both shorter-term and longer-term changes in diet quality and the subsequent mortality risk. This paper was actually led by Dr. Mercedes Sotos, who was a postdoc several years ago in my group, and now a professor at Autonomous University of Madrid. Mercedes is actually in the audience. And there are several take-home message from this important study. The first one is that the longer-term improvement in diet quality has much greater benefit than short-term improvement in diet quality. This makes a lot of sense because longer-term adherence to Mediterranean diet or other healthy dietary patterns confer reduced risk of chronic disease and mortality. And also, there is more than one way to eat a healthy diet. Here, we're looking at not just Mediterranean diet, but also DASH diet and alternative healthy eating index based on the Harvard eating plate. So I think that's a very important message because it means that dietary patterns can be adapted to different culture and food traditions. And another important takeaway from this analysis is that it's never too late to improve your diet. So in our cohort, even for people who are in the 60s and 70s who began to adopt Mediterranean diet, they can still benefit from this improvement in diet quality in later life in terms of reducing risk of chronic disease and improved longevity. Many biological mechanisms may underline the health benefits of Mediterranean diet. We know that this kind of dietary pattern is rich in fiber, polyphenols, healthy fats, and this combination need to reduce oxidative stress, reduce inflammation, improve the insulin sensitivity. Also, high amount of fiber and polyphenols in the Mediterranean diet can improve gut microbiome diversity and improve gut microbiome composition, and that can lead to increased production of healthy microbiome-derived metabolites such as short-chain fatty acids. Advances in omics technologies have significantly accelerated new discoveries in nutritional sciences. Now we can incorporate omics technologies such as genomics, proteomics, metabolomics, and the gut microbiome analysis into large cohort studies and randomized clinical trials. And those technologies have enabled us to unravel the secrets of healthy dietary patterns like Mediterranean diet. In the last 20 years, I have had the privilege and pleasure to collaborate with many colleagues in Spain, especially Miguel Angel on the PREDIMED trial. Initially, I served as the one of the members on the data safety monitoring board in the PREDIMED trial, and later on, through several NIH grants, we measured thousands of small molecule metabolites in blood and urine samples in the PREDIMED participants. Those analyses have enable us to better understand molecular pathways through which Mediterranean diet influence the risk of cardiometabolic diseases. This is a recent review paper led by Miguel Angel, in which we summarized the main results from the PREDIMED trial. So in this review, we identified both harmful and beneficial metabolites that influence the risk of cardiovascular disease. An important takeaway from this study, this review, is that following healthy Mediterranean diet can actually modulate the effects of some of the harmful metabolites in blood or urine samples. One of the most important metabolites that we have identified is ceramides, which is a class of lipid metabolites which have pro-inflammatory effects, and the higher amount of ceramides in circulation associated with increased CVD risk. An important finding from this study is that Mediterranean diet interventions actually abolished the deleterious effects of ceramide metabolites on CVD risk. As you can see here, increased ceramide metabolites is associated with increased risk of CVD only in the control group, but not in the intervention group. So the typical Western diet is associated with increased production of ceramides, and that lead to increased inflammation, mitochondrial dysfunction, and decreased metabolic flexibility. On the other hand, following a Mediterranean diet can decrease the production of ceramides, which lead to decreased chronic inflammation and the improved mitochondrial function. Using the metabolic data from the PREDIMED trial, we developed a metabolic signature for adherence to the Mediterranean diet, comprising 67 blood metabolites. We were able to replicate this signature in our cohorts in the US. And also, we found that this metabolic signature was associated with lower risk of CVD in both Spanish and the US populations. Furthermore, using genetic analysis, we were able to confirm that the association between the signature and CVD risk is likely to be causal. In this study, led by my former postdoc, Daniel Wang, who is now a faculty at Harvard Medical School, we examined the interplay between Mediterranean diet and gut microbiome. Not surprisingly, we found that adherence to Mediterranean diet improved gut microbiome composition and also diversity. I think the most important finding from this study is that not everyone responds to the Mediterranean diet equally in terms of their cardiometabolic risk. And the reason for this inter-person variability in their metabolic response is due to differences in their microbiome species, bacteria species. So I think this finding is very important for personalized nutrition or precision nutrition. It means that dietary recommendations can be tailored to individual characteristics, such as their microbiome composition and their metabolic profiles. In a recent study, we evaluated the effects of improving diet fat quality and the cardiovascular risk. So in the US, I don't know whether this is true in Europe, there is still a lot of controversy about butter, whether butter is healthy or not. And some people in the US are now advocating increased consumption of butter. In this study, using data from feeding trial, we developed a lipidomics score to reflect the beneficial effects of replacing butter with olive oil. And then we applied this score to large cohort studies like the Nurse Health study and the PREDIMED trial. What we found is that this score was associated with lower risk of developing type 2 diabetes and cardiovascular disease. So this study, I think, provide very strong and robust evidence that replacing butter, which is high in saturated fat, with olive oil, which is high in monounsaturated fat, is beneficial for the prevention of cardiovascular disease. There is convincing evidence that higher consumption of red meat and processed meat is associated with increased risk of diabetes and cardiovascular disease. However, we don't know which specific components of red meat contribute to this risk. In this integrated analysis of epidemiological data and the biomarker data, we identified heme iron to be an independent risk factor for type 2 diabetes. So increased consumption of heme iron is strongly associated with increased risk of diabetes. On the other hand, higher consumption of non-human iron, which come from plant-based foods, was not associated with diabetes risk. Furthermore, we found that higher consumption of heme iron accounted for at least 50% of the association between red meat intake and the risk of type 2 diabetes. Telomere length has been widely used as an aging biomarker. So longer telomere length is associated with lower risk of chronic disease and the increased longevity, whereas shorter telomere length is associated with decreased life expectancy. So in this study conducted in the Nurses' Health Study cohort, we found adherence to Mediterranean diet is associated with increased telomere length. So I think this is a very important finding suggesting that Mediterranean diet has anti-aging effect because the telomere length, again, is a useful biomarker for biological aging. As all of you know, olive oil is the hallmark of the traditional Mediterranean diet. It has been known as the liquid gold since the ancient times. So those are ancient fresco or mosaic from the Roman period depict the celebration of olive tree cultivation and also olive harvest. And beyond culinary use, olive oil has deep-rooted significance in Western civilization in terms of its history, in terms of religion and the culture. So this is the oldest olive tree on the island of Crete. It's 3,000 years old. It still produces high-quality olives. So olive trees are truly a gift from the Mother Nature to humanity and also to the environment, contributing to the preservation of natural resources and biodiversity. There is no question Spain is the king of olive oil production. As you can see that olive oil production in Spain exceeds any other countries. And I was told that the olive oil produced in Spain account for about half of the olive oil produced in the whole world. This is truly remarkable. Traditionally, olive oil is not part of the American diet. Olive oil consumption has been very low in the US population. However, in the past 3 decades, olive oil consumption has increased dramatically in the US, more than 10-fold increase compared to the consumption level in the 1980s, which is truly remarkable. In our large cohort studies, we found that higher consumption of olive oil is associated with wide range of health benefits. So we found that olive oil is associated with lower risk of cardiovascular disease, lower risk of type 2 diabetes, lower risk of total and cause-specific mortality. And also recently we found higher consumption of olive oil is associated with lower risk of dementia. So even though the consumption of olive oil in the US is still very low compared to that in Europe, higher consumption is still associated with lower risk of chronic diseases and mortality. As you know, a unique feature of extra virgin olive oil is the high amount of polyphenols. Some of the unique polyphenols include oleoropane, oleocansol, and hydroxytyrosol. And those polyphenols not just enhance the flavor and the taste of extra virgin olive oils, but also contribute to health benefit because of their antioxidant, anti-inflammatory effects. And the polyphenols in olive oils have also been found to improve gut microbiome diversity and gut microbiome composition. And those polyphenols have been found to inhibit the growth of pathogenic bacteria in the gut. And those changes in gut microbiome and the gut composition and diversity lead to reduced chronic inflammation, reduced serum IgE production, and also reduced autoimmunity. There is some evidence that the unique polyphenols in olive oil has a wide range of cardiometabolic benefits, including improved blood lipids, improved glycemic control, reduced blood pressure, decreased inflammatory biomarkers, decreased oxidative markers, improved liver function, and improved bone and joint health, and improved cognitive health. So those data are very promising. However, they are still preliminary and not conclusive, underscore the need for further studies on the potential benefits of those unique polyphenols in extra virgin olive oil on various health outcomes. In the director trial, plus trial, led by my colleague Iris Chai, Iris was a postdoc in my group 15 years ago and now professor in Israel. So in this study, we evaluated high polyphenol Mediterranean diet on aging biomarkers. So the high polyphenol Mediterranean diet is supplemented with 28 grams of walnuts every day, 3 to 4 cups of green tea, and also a mankind dark wheat shake. So mankind is aquatic plant food, which is very rich in polyphenols. It's widely consumed in Southeast Asian population. And so this high polyphenol Mediterranean diet, or you can call it Asian flavored Mediterranean diet or green Mediterranean diet, was found to significantly improve gut microbiome composition, significantly reduce visceral fat, intrahepatic fat, and also significantly slow down epigenetic clock and significantly improve brain structure and aging. In terms of brain health, the green Mediterranean diet or high polyphenol Mediterranean diet significantly attenuated age-related brain atrophy measured by hippocampal volume shrinkage. As you know, hippocampus is a very critical brain region which is involved in memory and cognition. When you get older, you will lose hippocampal volume, and it has been shown that hippocampal volume shrinkage is associated with memory loss, decreased cognitive function, and increased risk of dementia and Alzheimer's disease. So this data, I think, provide promising evidence that following Mediterranean diet can actually slow down the aging process, reducing aging-related biomarkers. So to summarize, I think that now there is strong evidence that multiple plant-based healthy eating patterns can contribute to healthy aging. So here we have the Okinawa diet, the Mediterranean diet, and the Nordic diet. Those are more traditional diet. We also have contemporary healthy dietary patterns, such as the DASH diet, planetary health diet, and the Harvard healthy eating plate. But the evidence, I think, at this point is strongest and the most robust for the Mediterranean diet. Because of the randomized clinical trials and numerous observational studies and also experimental evidence. And studies have shown that adherence to Mediterranean diet and other healthy dietary patterns reduce the risk of chronic disease, reduce physical disabilities, and improve cognitive and social functioning, and improve mental health. And so in the end, we're not just talking about increasing lifespan, but also increase health span, improving the quality of life. So that's why it's very important to emphasize the role of diet, a healthy dietary pattern in improving healthy lifespan. And in terms of biological mechanisms, I briefly touched on the role of Mediterranean diet in reducing chronic inflammation, epigenetic aging, oxidative stress, mitochondrial dysfunction, telomerase length, and microbiome and metabolome. But there's still a lot to be discovered. We still have a long way to go to fully understand the biological mechanisms underlying the Mediterranean diet, to fully unlock the secrets of the traditional Mediterranean diet in improving not just human health, but the health of the planet. So before I close, I just want to thank numerous colleagues and collaborators in our large cohort study in PREDIMED, and also acknowledge the funding from NIH to support our research. So thank you very much for your attention.
Well, thank you very much. We are at almost the end of this technical session, focused on the science, on the health science of the Mediterranean diet and the cultural, social aspect too. So our last participant is Dr. Walter Willett, medicine doctor too, PhD. Walter Willett is a professor of epidemiology and nutrition at the Harvard T.H. Chan School of Public Health, former chair of the Department of Nutrition at Harvard University, known for pioneering dietary methods in large cohort studies, including the Northeast Health Studies, author of over 2,000 research papers and widely cited by nutritional science. Dr. Willett is not physically today with us, but he has sent us a video. Okay, so let's go with the video of Dr. Walter Willett.
Colleagues, friends, and many people I have yet to meet. I'm sorry I'm not there in person to be part of this great celebration around the Mediterranean diet, and hopefully we'll be able to meet in person before too long. This is a great event, and maybe I'll add just a few words about where we started back in 1993 with the first Mediterranean Diet Conference. We were able to hold this with the efforts of some people who are with you, I think now, Greg Drescher, Antonio Tricopoulou, and members of the team from Old Ways Preservation Trust, including Don Gifford, who was a pioneer in emphasizing the value of traditional diets. We were privileged at that time to host Dr. Ansel Keys, who really did first shine light on the Mediterranean diet. He was, I think, 92 years of age at that time, and it was a real pleasure for all of us to meet him. He was still lively and thoughtful at that point in time. We were meeting in an era when low-fat diets were the primary recommendation of virtually all dietary guidelines, and all types of fat were being condemned, including olive oil. Especially, it was very heavy. But the evidence we were seeing in our cohort studies was not suggesting that all types of fat were bad, and that plant oils, unsaturated plant oils, in general, were looking pretty healthy. There was also a big debate whether we should be eating margarine or butter. Unfortunately, olive oil came up on the scene as an alternative, which was looking a lot better than both, because butter, especially that time, we knew was bad, but margarine even worse, since it was full of trans fat then. And now we're in an era when we have so much evidence from many different places, from many different kinds of research, that the Mediterranean dietary pattern is extremely healthy, and it's not a low-fat diet. We have, of course, the evidence from the Pardamed study done in Spain, and many of the investigators of that really important study are with you today. Back in 1993, we also realized that the environment was a concern. So we did have a session on that. But if I look back at it, it wasn't given the attention it really deserved. It was mostly about the extra irrigation water for producing more fruits and vegetables, and pesticides that would need to be available for increasing production of those foods. There wasn't really much about climate change, and now we realize that is a huge crisis. And one of the values of the Mediterranean diet is that we know it can be environmentally sustainable because of its relatively low animal source food consumption. And now, of course, we know that it's even more urgent that we pay attention to the environmental aspects of our diet. Right now, I'm involved with the update of the Eat Lancet Commission, and that's one of the reasons I can't be with you today. One of the concentrations, one of the focal points of the updated Eat Lancet Commission report will be on the translation of what we call a planetary health diet to different cultures, different food systems around the world. We know, fortunately, from a detailed examination of the Mediterranean diet, that we can translate that to other foods, other eating cultures, but at the same time, the Mediterranean diet does remain our guiding light. Unfortunately, there's not enough olive oil that can be produced to have everybody have that as their major source of fat in their diet. And it does look like healthy, non-trans other plant oils can be very good as well. So again, I'm sorry not to be with you today, and enjoying both the science, the company, and the good food that I know you are enjoying. Thank you.
Well, this is the end of this technical session. It has been for me a real pleasure to act as a presenter of this activity that we, CSIC, International Olive Council, and we, CIHEAM, Centre International d'Études Agronomiques Méditerranéennes, has to change a little bit of language, we have organized to celebrate the olive oil day. So I am going to give the floor and to invite to the stage to the director de la Organización del Consejo Legal Internacional, don Jaime Lillo. Adelante.
Thank you, Raúl, for conducting this amazing morning of speakers. Well, it's not easy to make a closing remarks after such people talking to the audience, but I just wanted to share with you that I hope you will enjoy this celebration as much as I did, and find it inspiring, learning from first hand about the discovering of the Mediterranean diet. I see those pictures of 5,000 years ago of olives and people collecting the trees from Antonia, and then how from there the story of how come to the recognition and fight against this idea of low fat is better for your health, and then discover now it's about the quality of the fat you are putting in your diet, and then the amount of evidence that Professor Martinez and told us since this publication, how much evidence it have. So many quotes, no, of this morning that I will have to elaborate, but yeah, this liquid of life that Antonio said, no? Because we used to say, oh, gold. No, life. Life is much more interesting than gold. No? And many other reflections and yeah, listening to Professor Frank Hu trying to get into not only we know that it's healthy, but why it's healthy, and all of these interactions that and so many things we still to learn. We learn that we are not late to improve our diet, and we hope that all together we are getting the idea to underline the importance of the Mediterranean diet. And I think the last wordings, well, before the last wordings, also with I like the appreciation that this is not food. This is not something that we take because we need to be healthy. We enjoy life. I think that is very important. We enjoy our food, and this is part of the life. And it's not only improving our health, it's improving our quality of life. And just to conclude, the last message of Professor Willett, now that linking not only he says we know with evidence that it's extremely healthy, but we also know more and more that it's sustainable, and it has a guide to reflect on what is going to be this planetary diet to face the challenge of feeding the growing population in a healthy manner and healthy for the planet as well. And that's why he was busy, and to know that all of this work is still alive, is present, is future. And also Professor Hu was presenting this evolution of the consumption in the United States. And I wonder how much this is related to the recognition of the Mediterranean diet and the health benefits of its products and the olive oil. So I think for all of us here in the room, we are connected to the producing countries, associations, institutions. We all work with olive oil, with table olives, with Mediterranean diet. And I think it's good to acknowledge the contribution of science to the world to make their choices when they're going to eat healthy. And we know there's more and more people willing to eat healthy and sustainable and take those decisions based on science. I think give us a lot of hope for the future. And just to conclude, this idea from Mr. Willett that he says it's unfortunate we don't have enough olive oil to feed the population. This is part of our challenge to make it bigger, to make it more available to contribute to the health of the world, and make it also making the sustainable living of the farmers and the territories behind the product. So thank you all for your day today, and I hope we can continue to disseminate all of these ideas. Thank you very much, and please, again, for the speakers and for all those institutions participating with us, CIHEAM, CSIC, and all the speakers, big applause. Okay, I think before we pass to the little to enjoy the oils, I would like to invite Vice Minister Burmandi from Iran, and we're gonna celebrate the recognition of the international collection of olive trees. It's another issue, but genetics in the olive trees is part of the solution for the challenges of climate change and others. And in Iran, they get the recognition of international collection, and I will be honored to give the certification to the Vice Minister. It would take just a minute. Thank you very much. Let's try some oils.